In a modern world, yet full of technological mysteries, our protagonist awakens without memories and with an absurd strength. A military AI from the future starts speaking inside his head, and the guy realizes he might have become a cyborg unintentionally. With not much else to do, he begins to wander around, trying to discover why everything was happening and why he was sent to this time. But without further ado, let's get to the good part. Today's story begins in a bustling city. Some electrical circuits from a traffic light start malfunctioning. Suddenly, on a street, the protagonist becomes conscious, looking at his body without understanding anything. Reflecting on this place and wanting to know where he was, the protagonist turns, seeing his reflection in a bus mirror passing by. He stares at himself, wanting to know who he was and what his name was, until he notices a Special Forces emblem on his arm. The protagonist moves his arm, realizing the clothes were a type of military uniform. He couldn't even remember his name, what he was doing, or where he was, until he hears a crying sound beside him. The protagonist turns, ready to strike, attacking a tree and breaking it with all his strength. The birds flying around make their noise. Kong is surprised by the strength of his attack as he knocked down the tree. The protagonist moved instinctively when he heard the sound, wanting to know what kind of strength this was. But the voice in his head says it was a pleasure to meet the agent. He was the artificial intelligence of the auxiliary combat system implanted in the body. Kong repeats about being embedded in him, then questions where they were and what year it was. The AI responds that based on the analysis of the posters, they seem to be in Seoul in the year 2024. He was from the military AI model created in the year 2082, deducing that he was from the future and returned to the past. The AI explains that its memory was reset, and it lost all information like the protagonist. On the other side of the street, a driver calmly drives his truck, until he notices the broken signal and tries to brake immediately. Without success, the truck starts driving uncontrollably around there. The system warns that a traffic accident risk was detected, and he should dodge the car coming his way. But the vehicle hits a fence and throws a stake in his direction. Kong dodges the attack purely by reflex. But looking back, he notices people saying a civilian was hit by the metal stake in the stomach. They shout to call an ambulance, and the system notifies that a civilian was injured. Kong opens his eyes and comments that he saw some red and blue screens now. Thanks to that, he was able to dodge easily. But an innocent civilian might lose their life in 5 minutes. He says it's impossible for the ambulance to arrive, and the AI responds that it can perform the surgery. Kong didn't know how to do it, but the AI could, and first, they need to know the patient's condition. He looks at the body and repeats about it, thinking there are still many questions, but he will save the injured person first due to urgency. Approaching the man immediately, Kong analyzes the stake embedded in the abdomen, saying the wound is deep and asks if the system can handle it. He says that with thread, needle, knife, and disinfectant, he can perform the procedure. The protagonist repeats about the materials and asks if he can perform surgery with just that. A civilian questions if he could perform first aid. The protagonist wonders if he can trust this AI and repeats about the materials mentioned before. That civilian shouts, saying anyone with the materials could go there to help. With everything in hand, the people there wonder who that guy was and if he was a doctor. The patient might get an infection and lose his life if he performs surgery with these things. Kong whispers to the robot that he already has the tools but still waits to start. The system says that if he grants temporary control, it could move his hands. He really wanted to know what it was, but there's no time. Thus, temporary control is given. The protagonist's hands emit a small blue glow and begin to move on their own. The stake is removed from the abdomen, and with his fingers, Kong flexes the needle. His fingers were moving at incredible speed and with absurd precision. His system says the expected blood loss of the patient exceeded the limit, and the survival rate was dropping. Kong wonders about this, and if the system can really save him, until he notices his hand is no longer moving. Suddenly, the patient's blood splatters. The protagonist stares at it, thinking he's in trouble. At the hospital, they inform that it's an emergency and the patient has severe hemorrhage, requiring immediate preparation for surgery. A doctor comes out sighing, and his assistant asks if they are finished. The doctor says the patient survived. His colleague congratulates him and asks if the injury was as severe as they thought. The doctor denies it but was shocked to see that without stopping the hemorrhage, he would have died before the ambulance arrived. He lost a lot of blood, but most of it has already been replaced by transfusion, and the assistant asks what the problem is. The doctor says he was sutured with regular thread, internally and externally. The problem was that the stitches were uniform, as if made by a sewing machine. The assistant tells him not to be ridiculous, and the doctor says he also didn't believe it, until someone arrives and interrupts the conversation. Park Ki-young introduces himself as a detective and asks about the patient. The doctor responds that he is stable, but he wants to know if it's true that the surgery was done in the middle of the street, and Young says he was also surprised. The citizen asked for a knife but used a box cutter, scaring the doctors. Young asks if it was difficult, and the doctor confirms, impossible to do on the street. The human body cannot be cut precisely with a box cutter as in the reports. He had bent a needle from the sewing kit. Young says the man left the location after the surgery, in a public bathroom on the other side of the city. Khan washes his hands and comments that he thought the system had given up, while the robot says it was its calculations. The protagonist asks about the memory loss, and the system says it was reset. Khan wants to know if the AI remembers his name, but it denies it. The protagonist says he will give it a name and asks what it is. The system responds that it is an AI of the implanted combat system. The young man says that shortening it, it would be John Ji-in. From now on, that would be the robot's name. Questioning why it wasn't responding, the AI informs that its name became John Ji-in. If he wanted to change it, he should say so, while the protagonist asks if it could be Black Fire Dragon, but Ji-in denies it. Khan comments that there was an emblem on his clothes saying Earth Union, and John says it was a military uniform. The protagonist concludes that he was an agent without memory and, even though it was made in 2082, they were in 2024, but John also didn't know. The internet couldn't be accessed because data input and output are restricted. Khan asks how it receives data, and John says it uses its senses, feeling the same if he eats something tasty. The output uses body and voice temporarily, assisting only when necessary. There are also things it cannot do, for example, assist with aiming, but it cannot shoot. Khan simplifies that it only helps in combat, and to know the reason for being there, he needs to experience it through his body. The protagonist's first mission of the day, betting that he could get a lot of information inside an internet cafe. Khan hadn't recovered his memory, but it was common sense that they needed money. He had nothing, so they had to get 10,000 won first. Khan asks if John can use vocal cords to sing, and the system says it helps if necessary. Elsewhere, the protagonist holds a spoon, with a mask on his face, ready to sing. The system prepared everything and brought a spoon. Khan asks if singing helps in battle, and John says it boosts others' morale. It made sense, but the protagonist questions why sing there, and how to compete with the rock band across the street. The protagonist observes from afar, and John says if he performs better, he would attract all the attention. Khan thinks that either way, he would get attention. Then he calls John, saying it's a good AI, but he doesn't believe it will work. It would just be a joke. The robot ignores him. A cardboard box is placed on the ground, and Khan moves to a different spot. He closes his eyes and begins to sing an almost perfect melody. Everyone admires the young man, commenting that it was their favorite song or that the chant was great. The protagonist wonders if the heartthrob pose is necessary, and John says engaging the audience is essential. People comment about the incredible singer without instruments, and decide to leave the band to see him. The band is shocked, and the audience is moved by Kang's melody. The protagonist sings his traditional Korean song, and wonders if it's really working. The audience wonders who the singer is and how he can use both low and high notes like that, as it's incredible. They notice he repeats the same verse because the song was collected today. The minimum funds for the operation were acquired with people putting money in the box. Kang congratulates the good work, and says they should leave, running while people asked him to sing one more. From afar, a blonde girl admires everything. She is enchanted by the protagonist's voice and appearance, until a customer informs Eun Seo that table 15 ordered ramen, and the girl says she's on her way, but she would like to hear a bit more about the music. Walking around, Kang calls for John Ji-in. She says that at the internet cafe they might find data from the Earth Federation, but questions what if they find nothing. John comments that the priority is to infiltrate and fit in, and they need contact with the command center. The protagonist notices a paper stating they were hiring and requires an ID with a resume, and experience is ideal. That was a way to get shelter, and they even provide food for employees. John says that if he succeeds in infiltrating, the information gathering and food problem will be solved. Kang climbs the stairs and comments that if he gets the job, he'll ask if he can stay and needs a place to sleep. John says that if they secure shelter, the rest will resolve itself, and Kang still didn't have extra clothes. The system notes that his military uniform has a camouflage feature using chameleon memory fiber to acquire a new appearance. The clothing can be divided into multiple pieces and assembled in different formats. The protagonist decides to try, separating the sleeve from his shirt. Thus, he begins the transformation into his new outfit. The protagonist finally finishes what he had done, wearing a ridiculous red outfit this time. Kang comments that this outfit looks like the bands he saw earlier, and questions why John wasn't saying anything. Two other guys climb the stairs and comment that even with the internet cafe next door, he should dress better. Until they notice the protagonist at the top, and both are completely shocked by the ugliness of that outfit. The protagonist stares at them and they pass by pretending he doesn't exist. Kang watches them climb in silence and comments that they didn't like his outfit, and John says it's possible. So the protagonist decides to try again and changes his outfit. With a normal outfit, he climbs the stairs and John says it was perfect because wearing a cap was excellent for an agent. Khan turns the doorknob of the internet cafe and enters the place. He looks from side to side and begins to scan. 96% of those present were playing online. Convenience stores had been checked along with their payment methods. The status of meals was checked along with suitable spaces for temporary residents. This place was great for his current situation. Within that calm environment, people play or watch videos while browsing the internet. The shop owner deduces that the protagonist was applying for the job, questioning if he doesn't have a resume or ID and was presumptuous. Then he informs that he can make the resume there and should just bring the ID tomorrow, as he needs a replacement for the employee he lost. Hoping he is qualified for the job, the owner reflects that he is not bad. But it seemed he had come there just to sit and relax, and even with a handsome face, it seemed he only knows how to make instant noodles. Questioning if he knows how to use a frying pan and they work with food, so he should know the basics of cooking. John notifies that he has military kitchen tactical skills for soldier management. The protagonist says he can, and the shop owner asks him to make some fried rice. Khan walks into the kitchen and looks at a corner there. Jean identifies all the ingredients for the fried rice. Khan asks if she can do it, and should make it tasty, while Jean requests temporary control of the hands. The protagonist allows it, and thus they move the kitchen utensils. He opens the fridge and gathers the materials on the table, thinking that somehow his body was moving slightly as if remembering how to do it. The shop owner notices something in his kitchen, surprised to see the protagonist cooking. He thinks he was just going to reheat some frozen rice but was cooking from scratch. The protagonist prepares a perfect dish with each ingredient of his fried rice. That shop owner wonders how he was doing it so quickly. Khan hands over the dish saying it was ready, and the shop owner thinks he can't see his hands moving. And being fast was important, but if it's not tasty it will be useless, and he cooks so fast it must still be raw. Putting a bit on the spoon while informing he would taste it. As he puts the spoon in his mouth, he chews a bit. Khan wonders mentally if it was bad. The shop owner finishes chewing and digesting the food and then puts the spoon aside saying he can't handle it. Ordering a soju to be brought over until realizing it was an internet cafe, and for a second, he thought he was at his favorite bar, while Eun Seo approached, calling her uncle and asking what he was talking about. The shop owner introduces his niece, Cha Eun Seo, and says they should get along well. Cha Eun Seo says he was the guy singing outside earlier. The protagonist wonders how she knew that. The girl says that with a voice like his, he doesn't need to work in an internet cafe, and the protagonist responds that he was good at anything. The shop owner says he's happy because he has a young man to cook, and Eun Seo can't even make instant noodles. Questioning if the young man has a preferred schedule to work, Khan says he prefers to work part-time with flexible specific times. He also noticed earlier that there was a storage room and would like to stay there, and the owner asks if he doesn't have a home. The protagonist explains that he has been homeless for some time, and the shop owner thinks these are demanding conditions, but he's too good to pass up. The internet cafe next door became a success due to good food and was jealous of it, so he will use the opportunity to gain his reputation, saying he can stay in the storage, get free food, and earn twice as much per week, but only if his food increases sales, and the protagonist notices someone from afar. The girl asks Kim Jae to eat something before playing, but the young man says the internet cafe also serves food, and they should eat there. She complains that the food there is terrible, and Khan calls the customer, saying he should try his food first, before deciding if it would be good or bad. A few minutes later, the rice dish is ready. Eun Seo and the shop owner are completely surprised. The protagonist asks her to bring a plate, and the girl runs to get it. He had already done it, and even the dish was perfect. The owner tells Eun Seo to take it to the customer. Outside, the girl comments that the newcomer was really bold, wondering how good the food from an internet cafe can be, and Kim Jae says since they ordered, they could try it and leave. Eun Seo arrives, saying their fried rice was made, and Kim Jae is startled because he hadn't even started playing, then tells the two students to enjoy their meal. Kim Jae says they only ordered fried rice because it seemed really expensive, and the girl says that's what he ordered and should enjoy it. Both decide they will eat, taking a spoonful to their mouths. They are shocked by the taste and have an epiphany, remembering when they were chubby and chasing after a chicken. Upon catching and grabbing that food, they hid behind a bush to eat. They cry, remembering it was the same taste as before, shouting that it was delicious and this place was really the best place with fried rice. They order more dishes, and other customers decide they should try it too, ordering 2 more, and a man from the other side orders 1. Eun Seo runs towards the kitchen. She announces they had 12 more orders of fried rice at once. The shop owner questions if the protagonist can handle it. Khan turns and calls for John, asking if she can make 12 meals taste good. Jean confirms because tactical field cooking was done on a large scale, and providing tasty food was important. Soldiers could feel demoralized if they ate bad food after risking themselves, and Khan says it was impressive and will give control. After about 3 hours from the start of the shift, the shop owner had his face full of money and asks what his name is. These sales in 3 hours had been incredible, and he will pay him double with no ulterior motives, but wants to know the name of his new employee. The protagonist introduces himself as Na Kang-in. That shop owner says he will clean the storage room for him and stock the ingredients, so he should keep up the good work. Ji-in questions if he remembered his real name, and the protagonist denies it and says it just came out reflexively and will use it until the real one comes to mind. The boss says they got more orders for fried rice, and he could handle it. A few minutes later on a PC, the protagonist says they found a place to stay, but to receive his payment, he needed an identity and questions if Ji-in can hack the database, and the robot confirms. Kang asks if she can do the same thing with the bank, but it was impossible because her abilities were local. The protagonist reclines in the chair, saying it was expected. Assuming they were infiltrating in 2024 for a secret mission, he questions if he can forge an identity. Ji-in confirms and asks for control of the protagonist's hands. The Korean government's database searches for similar information to his, and should keep his eyes open to collect visual information. The protagonist says he didn't need to complain anymore, until he noticed something, asking to wait a second and wanting to know what that was. Ji-in says an unknown error was detected and the information for Na Kang-in was already registered. The fingerprints were the same with 100% accuracy. The protagonist wonders how this was possible, and it was from the Earth Federation of 2082. Wondering if this federation existed in 2024 as well. Checking the information of the major countries, there was no result for the Earth Federation in 2024. Khan wonders if he exists simultaneously in 2024 and 2082. Ji-in says they have insufficient information to determine. The protagonist asks to look at his personal data and there must be some important clue. In the search result, the protagonist had nothing besides being a former member of the Specialized Administration Unit. Currently, it indicated he was unemployed. The protagonist looks back and Ji-in notifies that Eun-seo was approaching. The girl says he really types fast, asking if he also knows how to develop programs, and the protagonist says it was rude to spy on other monitors. Eun-seo says her uncle gave her his card to go to the market with Mr. Kang and they should go together. Outside, she comments that it was a relief to be able to leave after working for hours, and that Kang really cut things super fast and the protagonist thinks he just asked Ji-in to do it. She says he put all the heavy ingredients in a pot but was carrying it easily. His arms seemed totally made of iron. The girl says it was clear they weren't, and it was just a metaphor. But it was a waste to go out, and she wonders if they can go to her cafe. After all, they were talking about her uncle's card, until someone bumps into her. The girl is thrown into Kang's arms, and the men tell her to watch where she's going, if she doesn't want to lose her life, leaving the protagonist on alert. Ji-in warns about hostile targets detected, asking if he would like to switch to combat mode. Eun-seo interrupts the cold atmosphere and apologizes for that. She says she will be more careful from now on, and the gangster says she really got scared. His brother was losing all day, so he wasn't in a good mood, but it was okay and they should just go on their way. Ji-in says the target was leaving and the security mode was maintained. Khan just stares at this and they take the elevator to the 4th floor. He questions if the girl was okay and Eun-seo confirms but was just scared and ended up crying. Back at the cafe, the shop owner runs to them shouting that it was an emergency and was calling her. The internet suddenly went down and it was chaos there. She called support but they hadn't been there for a long time. Khan watches this with a serious expression, wondering if they could have been tracked by a hacker when they accessed government data, but Ji-in says it was useless in 2024. In that case, they need to access the base from there and Khan questions where the server was. He will try to fix it based on what he knows. Ji-in hadn't found any trace of someone tracking them but managed to notice a hacking attempt. Khan wonders why, because it was just an internet cafe. The AI explains it was a hacking program installed and the function collided with the security program, causing the internet overload. They may have used the internet cafe for the test, and Kang says to find out who the hacker was. Ji-in starts tracking the person and typing on the keyboard. The hacker's location is identified and he moved the signal through 7 servers, preventing it from being tracked. 6 of them were abroad, but 1 was nearby. Khan says they must have chosen a nearby internet cafe to test this and asks why distance matters and probably came to install the program directly, and if it could have been those guys from earlier, until someone shouts they were disconnected in the middle of a ranked match. Eun-seo says she will extend his time for free, but the guy says he almost won the match to rank up. Khan says that the customers seemed really angry and asks if Ji-in has a solution, with the AI suggesting offering food, as it would be effective. There was a list of simple snacks, and the protagonist chooses number 3. Khan jokes that Ji-in really likes money, but the robot doesn't understand. Eun-seo apologizes to the customer, The protagonist approaches, saying he is sorry for the inconvenience. The servers have been stabilized, so the internet won't go down again, and that popcorn would be on the house. That man takes the cup of popcorn, asking if he thought this would replace his game. Throwing a little into his mouth and having a wonderful sensation, the man starts moaning and shouting with happiness, saying he feels very good and has the energy to reach the silver rank, and asks if he can get another cup of this, thanking while running away from there. Unseo questions how he did that, and if he put something magical in those snacks, because it must be very good to calm people like that. She chews a little and is impressed, saying it was salty but also sweet and the perfect mix, wanting to know how he did it, while Kong says they combined some ingredients. He needs to deal with the internet problem for a while, so he should deliver this to the affected customers earlier, and left some in the kitchen. Unseo stares at him as he leaves, saying that if there were a hero in modern times, it could be this guy. Outside the city, Jian comments that they should eliminate the enemy that attacked their base, and Khan says he knows, and that was the reason they captured the hacker. Activating navigation mode. There was no television, guards, or tactical detection equipment nearby. Khan says they really made an effort to stay hidden, and they will go in there. The protagonist climbs the stairs of the building, saying he heard something coming from that red door, and Jian amplifies the audio, extracting, removing noise, enhancing quality and sound, hearing some people threatening a civilian, who says it's a test version that wasn't stable, and once he fixes the bugs, it will work. He feels sorry and didn't know what kind of work it was, asking them not to take his life. Jian says the analysis suggests a civilian student was being threatened and they should recover the civilians to evacuate them. Inside there, those gangsters from yesterday say if he makes another excuse, he will lose his life. Khan prepares a kick and strikes the door to break it. A nerd was crouched on the floor and lets out a cry of astonishment. The protagonist hides his identity with a mask and cap. Those gangsters get up and walk towards him, while the nerd continues crying in fear, asking if there were more of them around there. A gangster asks if his friend hadn't locked the door, but he had. Then wants to know how some uninvited guests were able to enter. He is going to kick the man out from now on, and Khan punches him, throwing the gangster away while the protagonist maintains his combat stance. He looks coldly at the others he will attack next. The nerd's name is An Song Hwan, and he was a first-year student at Korean University. He was interested in computer hacking since he was young, and now he has become a skilled hacker to the point where professionals ask for his help, and another issue came to him. When he was looking for a part-time job, he received a recruitment message. The guy repeats it was a job for a security company, and it only took 3 or 4 days, but paid for the month even though it was part-time. He is going to start now and has never been so excited to get a job in all his experience. But it had been a scam and they weren't a legitimate company. He hadn't experienced everything yet, but he would generally lose his life this way, and he was preparing for the worst. Song Hwan is startled when he sees the protagonist striking the gangster, thinking his hero had appeared. With a few seconds passing in the classroom, the protagonist thinks he had entered, but doesn't know if it's the right thing to do, while the robot says they were currently on a stealth mission. Kong comments that he was really strong and knocked out that giant guy with one blow, and Jian tells him to be careful, because the opponents in front of him were armed with knives, and the gangster asks where the hell he came from and who he was. The protagonist repeats he shouldn't be scared, and Jian reminds him that as a special agent, his body was enhanced and his chance was 100%. Kong raises his finger towards them, shouting that he was walking and heard someone being beaten, and then went in there. Jian says he had made an unintentional provocation and the hostility increased, while the long-haired thug runs towards him with the knife. Khan whispers that physically he can easily win and will focus on attacking mentally as well. The long-haired thug says he kept running his mouth while he was the only one walking, until his sentence is interrupted by a kick to his head, which leaves him stuck in the ceiling by his head. The bald guy runs towards him calling him a crazy bastard. Khan turns and changes the direction of his foot, striking the killer's head with extreme ease. He is knocked out and falls to the ground with the protagonist having finished them all. Kong comments that his kick was really very powerful and his movements seemed mechanical, and Jian says he kicked with 5 times the human strength. The protagonist thinks they could be steroids, but they weren't used in training. Song Hwan thinks this guy was murmuring to himself since then, wondering if he could be a police officer communicating via radio or a government agent who came to capture the hacker. No matter how innocent he was now, if you look at his past, he was a bad hacker, taking money and changing other people's passwords. Maybe he knows about the 10 times he used his skills for minor matters and why his past self did that. Then he shouts that he didn't do any of that. He just did what he was told, and was really a good guy, so he asks to be let go, and Kong thinks no one accused him. Jian says the chance of him telling the truth is 90%, and he seemed like an ethical hacker, and Kong wonders if he can distinguish even that. He can analyze expressions and behaviors of prisoners to determine their reality. The more precise, the more reliable the results. Khan says he really has skills for everything, but there was still a 10% chance of lying. Then asks why he was in that place. Song Hwan says he was tricked into a part-time job checking security and was locked there for 3 days. These guys were really bad men, and after that job, they were trying to keep him doing bad things, like stock manipulation. He was told to create a program to manipulate comments on stock forums, and they went directly to the nearby internet cafe to install it. The protagonist remembers when he had met them earlier. Song Hwan says they must be from a group of that type of manipulation. There was probably someone behind them, so they must be hired. Since they were targeting his temporary base, at least he was safe for now, but can't let them go and has to deal with whoever was behind him. Then he tells him to call the police and say he was kidnapped, because when they come just tell them everything that happened. Song Hwan questions if he won't get in trouble, and Kang complains about being called old, asking if he even knows what his face looked like, but the nerd says no. Khan says he was just someone who saved him when he was passing by and heard someone came and beat him, so he helped. And now he's going to leave, asking if he should wait for the police. The nerd denies it for that reason, but questions if he can hit them a little too, and he could say it was self-defense. The protagonist says they won't wake up and he can do it with confidence. Song Hwan prepares his fist and advances to the thief, trying to hit his head, but the bald man suddenly wakes up. He screams as loud as he can, scaring even Kang. The police cars arrive at that location. Those officers question if they were beaten. They were still alive and question Song Hwan about what was happening there. The nerd says those bastards locked him up for 3 days and beat him until he made a program to manipulate stock forums and would take his life if he failed. That officer questions how they ended up that way, and Song Hwan says he didn't do it, and a guy heard the commotion and helped him. The detective talks about these guys manipulating stocks, and there was definitely someone behind them. When these guys wake up, Young should interrogate them and wonder while they were under the influence of substances. They will reveal everything. Young questions who was the guy who beat them up like that, and the detective replies that he was just a passerby. They just had some broken bones and won't lose their lives. Besides, they drew the knife first. Young questions what he should do, and the detective tells him to get the security footage and find out who did all this. They don't need to arrest him, but it was too big of a matter to leave aside without investigating. Khan walks down the street, and Jian says there's a camera ahead and he should turn right. The protagonist questions if he's sure the buildings don't have cameras, and Jian confirms because they need to complete the missions. Khan says he was really surprised earlier because he didn't expect him to get up with just a slap, and Jian says it's due to reflexes. The protagonist suggests she might have a phone function, but the AI wasn't capable of that. So the young man decides to get a cell phone, but since he doesn't have money, he's going to his temporary home. 3 days have passed since the incident. The day after retreating from the civil hacker, he went to the address to get information about him. But it was just an empty swamp in the province of Gangwon. There were only rumors that they'd burned down the whole house. Wondering who he was and what kind of place this was where he was, and if he was really communicating with the future or if it was a human from the future who came back to the past. With not much information to gather, he has no choice but to return empty-handed and full of questions. Back at the internet cafe, they had found peace, and business grew more and more. Along with the part-time work alongside Eun Seo, the internet cafe had become famous thanks to influencers, and especially recipes that were only sold while he was at the internet cafe. When he leaves, these dishes aren't sold. It was a random sales method that had an unexpected effect, and the internet cafe started gathering customers even without him there. Some only came because of the food, but most stayed using the internet cafe for at least an hour or two. Now, judging by the face of the owner Cha Dong-suk, the number of customers increased, and it seemed he hired more part-time staff. Introducing the new colleague and asking his name, that familiar nerd voice says it was good to see him, and his name was Song Hwan, while Jian comments that he was the civilian they had rescued from captivity 3 days ago. Dong-suk says he was really a doctor in computer science, and Song Hwan confirms because if one of them breaks, he can fix it quickly. Then he bows his head, saying he hopes to get along well with Eun Seo and Kang. Song Hwan thinks the reason he applied there was the bad feeling for having caused damage to the internet cafe. Even though he forced himself to do it, he will work hard. Dong-suk introduces Kang, saying he was the boss who made the restaurant famous but was good with computers too, and they should get along. Song Hwan notices something and says anyway. He must be older than him, relieving the protagonist for not noticing. The nerd says it was nice to meet him and asks to take care of him. Kang shakes his hand and agrees, while Jian warns that working with this person puts his identity at risk and recommends asking the boss to fire him. The protagonist wonders how he could do that while calling him Hyung and says he will work hard with the nerd. In a market, they evaluate today's list to confirm. All purchases were completed, and the recipe had been securely stored as well. The protagonist says Jian seems really tough when it comes to food and money, and the robot says money control was essential for the agent and the success of the mission. Khan says it was good and avoids detection, but honestly, it would be nice to enjoy and eat. Suddenly, a fire alarm goes off. The protagonist looks at the street, which was apparently normal, saying that Jian was planning to malfunction on purpose to change the subject, but the robot says no. Khan decides to keep walking because there's nothing wrong, but an explosion happens suddenly. He is confused while the people around him run in the opposite direction of the fire. The young man wonders if that was really a fire. His body was equipped with a combat support artificial intelligence. He has increased agility in his eyes, and an additional module in his ears, besides his legs enhanced with strength. This level of fire was something he could end with a chance, preparing a strange stance while shouting that it was a fire-suppressing burst. But nothing happens, and he just looks like a man. And Jian asks if the agent has gone crazy. Khan concludes that he doesn't have the freezing ray ability, and Jian wonders if he could even be human if he did that. But the protagonist questions what the easy way to put out the fire is, and the AI says it was to call the firefighters, until he hears a scream from the top of the building. It was a girl asking for help, and people wonder what they should do. Khan asks how long it will take for the firefighters to arrive, and Jian says it would take 4 minutes. There is a high probability that the fire will reach the top in 4 minutes, and if they don't rescue her now, there is a 99% chance she will lose her life. Khan puts the mask on his face and tells him to find an entry route into the building. Jian says there were no usable paths in front and suggests a route where he can avoid the toxic gas and climb. The protagonist starts climbing on panels and surfaces at an incredible speed. People along the way comment that this guy was insane and wonder if he will save her. The protagonist tells her to check if there are any other survivors on other floors, and Jian hears no movement inside, as most people have evacuated. Khan grabs onto a window, agreeing with him. People say he was like Spider-Man and was a climber or something like that. Jian warns that there is a risk of explosion right ahead of the protagonist. He notices a glass trembling nearby. Khan hangs on to avoid the explosion, commenting that his grip saved him, and Jian tells him to thank her for the warning. The protagonist continues jumping through the building's floors. Upon reaching the top, he takes a deep breath. The little girl who was crying lifts her face. The protagonist extends his hand to the girl. She calls her savior and raises her hands too, going into his arms while Jian warns that it was dangerous and the fire was spreading faster than expected. The protagonist wonders if he was there to lose his life with her, and the girl is surprised. Khan thinks his body is enhanced, so if he holds her and jumps, he won't get hurt. Jian says there are many witnesses, and if his superhuman abilities are seen, his identity as an agent could be compromised. He may not be able to adapt to the situation after that. The protagonist suddenly notices a clothesline, wondering if he could use it to descend, and the little girl tries to deny the idea. Jian says the lower part of the building was engulfed in flames, and any direction was unsafe from now on. Khan takes the clothes and says it was a bit crazy, but he will tie the line to another building and walk across it, and the girl says she really can't do that, and asks if he was crazy to walk at that height, while the protagonist says he will handle the actions and Jian should assist with balance. When he connects the line, he could throw himself and will adjust the movements in detail, and the protagonist asks if he can't use his hand from the start. Jian says throwing actions were similar to attacking, and that was beyond her reach, and the protagonist says she can cook but doesn't do something like that. The AI says he was correct and should do it himself, but he would do it anyway and swings the rope in the air a few times. The rope is thrown far and catches on the ladder of another building. The protagonist says it was good and he could go, while the girl cries, saying she can't do it. She screams when Khan grabs her because she thought he would throw her off the building. People outside wonder if he will really cross like that and should stack something underneath him. The girl asks to be saved while screaming for her mother, but the protagonist tells her to stay still and not move, because at this height, they've already done enough. Jian warns that an unexpected situation occurred. The rope was breaking faster than expected. The protagonist wonders how much time they still have. The AI says at this rate, the rope will break before they reach the other side, starting to snap, and the protagonist complains a bit, jumping from up there with the girl and throwing her to the other building. The little girl lands on top while Jian warns that the rope was breaking. Khan starts to fall, and his mind suddenly clicks. The protagonist falls from the building, thinking about calculating, wanting to know what he should do. With his reflex, the guy grabs the rope, using quick and capable movements to descend rapidly and safely. Then the protagonist starts jumping off the wall. People wonder if this guy was alive and was even running on the buildings. Khan finally arrives at his destination and lands on the ground. He curses the situation, thinking he was almost finished. The little girl who was saved suffers from a headache, but she screams that he was a ghost upon noticing the protagonist. She wonders how he was still alive and if he was some kind of superhuman, and the protagonist just confirms. The girl questions why they were talking so casually and if they knew each other, but Kang says she seemed new too. Then he turns, complaining that Jian miscalculated, and he believed him because he was part of the strategic special forces, and the AI responds that it didn't expect to be flammable. Suddenly, the girl approaches him, asking if he was the owner of that internet cafe that recently became famous. The protagonist wants to know how she found that out. As the day goes by, firefighters arrive and put out the fire in the building. Some people watch the protagonist save the girl on their phones. He had wrapped himself in the rope and crossed while holding someone, wondering if he was a famous climber or a master jumper or something like that. And if they had a clue, it would be that trash bag. To rescue someone, all he needs are his limbs, and if he had a plastic bag in hand, he would obviously drop it. So the man who did this had left his shopping bag behind. It seemed they were using sauces for cooking, and there was a recipe too, but it was hard to read. The name of the market is visible, and they could check the footage, while Jung says he's not a criminal and they don't need to do that. Until he notices a call from his boss and asks what it was, while the detective asks why he answers the phone like that. Jung says he was cutting his vacation short and that it was just a short circuit or gas leak there. The detective responds that he's not sure about that, but it wasn't the real problem since there was a fatality on the 3rd floor. Jung and the officer complain, thinking there wouldn't be any of that, but he says he understands and will start looking for the wanderer. In a SBA and sauna room called Haddock, the girl comes out saying that a hot bath was really amazing, and Kang says he saved her life and now she was asking him to pay for her bath. She responds that her house burned down completely, and he should feel sorry because she has no parents and was alone with no place to stay at night. And she was serious because she was registered as a student and was planning to work part-time, wondering why now she should survive. And Kang says if she wants to work part-time, she should just do it. The girl asks about starting to work, remembering that the internet cafe was hiring part-time employees, and asks for help to get a job while Kang says goodbye. She grabs his shirt, pleading, and the protagonist tells her to ask the boss. The girl says to ask together, and Kang gives in. But anyway, he wants to know how she managed to recognize him, and she says she goes to the internet cafe all the time. She is a popular game streamer and doesn't have a computer at home, so she streams there. The protagonist wonders if she really thinks she's popular and good at games, but the girl denies everything. At the internet cafe, Unseo calls for the protagonist, asking why he was arriving so late, but she notices the girl, and she introduces herself as Ariam. Unseo asks why he went to buy sauce but came back empty-handed, and the protagonist says he lost it while watching the fire. She jokes that he must have been so excited that he forgot, and probably someone took it, so Kang tells her to deduct it from his pay. Suddenly, Jian calls for his agent. Analyzing the visual data he gathered, there's a high chance many people filmed the fire incident. He could check articles on the internet to gather information, and he even found footage of the scene with news on a famous site. Based on their reactions, it was spreading quickly online, and Kang says there's no problem, and Ji-in will delete all videos. But the AI doesn't have those hacking abilities because it's a combat AI, and that hacking event was just for identity manipulation. She has military-grade defensive skills, but since she doesn't have attack capabilities now, she can't show him. Jung finds himself in front of the internet cafe, saying there was a rope master at the internet cafe. Inside a room, Jian warns that he failed to find any information about the Earth Alliance again today. Kang says he was wondering if there was something connected with the year 2082 but thinks not, and there's a possibility they are hiding from them. He confirmed several messages about people coming from the future, but none of them are believable. The protagonist says it was indeed 2024, but Jian explains that his existence couldn't be explained with that technology. Kang reflects that no matter how much he looks at it, it would be strange, but he still wants to know what happened at the construction site yesterday. Jian only mentions that a person lost their life in that incident. The protagonist wonders if they lost someone and if it was his fault, but Ji-in completely denies it, because the deceased was found in the room he passed while climbing the construction yesterday, and the protagonist asks if he didn't see him. Ji-in explains that his lenses are enhanced, not something like improved vision. There were no signs of movement, sounds of life, or any noise detected in the area. The protagonist asks what that means and if he could have been lifeless from the moment he arrived. And it wasn't just a fire but a premeditated murder, and Ji-in says there's a high chance of that. Until outside, Unseo's voice questions about the police, saying yes, and it seemed like the card used in the purchase belonged to this place. Jung questions if she bought those items from the bag. Unseo repeats about this thing while turning and calling for Kang-in, saying that the police officer brought the purchases he lost while watching the fire yesterday. He says the guy left it behind while watching, and Unseo jokes that the police can track even people like that. The protagonist thanks him for bringing his purchases. Jung hands over the card and says if he has any leads about yesterday's incident, he should contact him. Unseo agrees and bids him farewell. Kang whispers that to catch the killer, He needs the detective's help and wonders if he could find him. The AI explains that it confirmed the identity, so it was safe for him to go to the detective, and Eun-seo questions if he has something to do outside because she wants to stay close to him. Kang agrees after an instruction from Ji-in. Eun-seo wonders if they could work together today, but the protagonist declines since he has things to do outside. The girl is puzzled for a few seconds, but says he is really hard to understand. At the Seoul police station, in the detective department, Young says he is the owner of the bag from earlier, and the protagonist confirms. The detective tries to joke that he shouldn't do something like that just for returning a lost item. Khan says he didn't come for that, leaving the officer puzzled. The protagonist mentions that in yesterday's incident, he thought it was an attempted murder. Young says that since there was a fatality, it was a normal suspicion, but Khan explains there's a high chance of that. The detective questions if he has evidence because when a random civilian makes guesses, it complicates the investigation. Khan says he didn't see anyone moving in the room while he was climbing the rope, leaving the detective completely shocked after realizing what was said, saying that he was the rope master seen yesterday, and wants to know why he hadn't spoken earlier, and Kang responds that it was because they hadn't asked about it. Young says he climbed like Spider-Man and carried someone on the rope to cross away from there. The detective takes a notebook and questions if he can explain again why he suspects it was a murder. In the major crimes team, Young notes that there were no movements in the room even with the fire burning. The victim was already lifeless or was intoxicated by alcohol or illicit substances. So he was saying someone set the building on fire to cover up the murder, and Khan confirms because he noticed the survivors while climbing the building. A man near them asks if the forensic service was contacted, and Young says not yet, and it takes time to perform an autopsy, but the fire was very intense. Another woman says they only have the word that the fire was caused by a short circuit, and there were no cameras in the area. Wondering if they should make a sketch of the suspects now, Khan whispers to Ji-in wanting to know if he remembers the faces of the people he saw yesterday, and the robot says yes and stores visual information after that, showing a video screen in front of the protagonist, who is impressed. He says he saw 4 people walking towards the construction yesterday. The first was going outside while holding the phone in his right hand and had a bracelet on his left wrist. His phone had a gray case, and his shirt was white, leaving Young impressed by his description. The protagonist thinks he was describing this in front of him. Then he begins to describe the second and third person. Young questions if he can help create a portrait and suggests doing it before the memory fades. But his portrait artist was out for a moment, and if he wants, he can wait a bit, but Kang says he will draw it. And he was somewhat decent at drawing, thinking Ji-in was really good at it. The protagonist prepares his pen and places it in front of the paper, asking if Ji-in can capture the 3 suspects and project them in his vision and zoom in a bit. People notice the protagonist murmuring to himself, and it seemed a bit strange. Khan says he can now draw each of them, starting to scribble on the paper and taking a few minutes to finish. He gathers the information and says everything is ready, showing the drawing to the others while they wonder if the protagonist was joking. He crumples the paper and says he just took a small break. The protagonist starts thinking while drawing, saying Ji-in should draw this, while the robot says it can only move with temporary control. The detective in the white shirt questions if he really couldn't draw, and Young responds that he doesn't know and they need to contact the artist soon. But a hypothetical light emanates from the protagonist's chair. Both turn and approach Kang, surprised to see the drawing. The protagonist's hands move at an absurd speed. They are astonished and tell him to wait a minute, as it doesn't even make sense. The protagonist seemed like a machine and a genius, wanting to know if he is a painter as his main job. Khan says only 3 people left the area before the fire started, and if the arsonist fled, it must be one of the people. The chief knocks on the office door, announcing they will check their identities immediately and investigate this case. The next day at the internet cafe, the protagonist makes a perfect dish of food once again. Eun-seo says Kang's malatang was amazing, and his other friends say it was fantastic and very good. The blonde reveals she heard about the fire at Aryum's house being caused by an arsonist, and Song-hwan says they already caught the culprit, and they found illicit substances with him too, while the protagonist thinks it hasn't been many days since the police started investigating. All this was thanks to Ji-in's ability. With a noisy atmosphere at the dining table, Kang picks up his phone, answering a call from Detective Young, who says he wanted to thank him for capturing the culprit. 2 of the people in the drawings were local residents, but the other was not from there, and his friends were the victims. They still need to investigate the exact cause but also found illicit substances in his pockets. It seemed he came to collect money because of the substances, and when he couldn't, he took his client's life. He managed to track down the one selling drugs and advanced on the scene, being actor Na Jung-jian, and now the entertainment industry is in chaos. Khan says this is getting bigger and bigger, and Young says it really seems like there won't be any vacations. But thanks to the drawing he made, they were able to proceed with things much faster, and question about making the drawings public. The protagonist says as long as his identity isn't revealed, it's alright, and Detective Jung calls him a real hero. Kang responds that he was just doing his job, and his friends approach to try to listen to the conversation, asking what was happening, and what their appa had drawn for Detective Park. Kang responds it was just some scribbles, and Ariam says he must be really bad to ask not to reveal his drawings. Suddenly, a noise in the PC area can be heard. Some people argue for having spilled ramen on the floor, and because of that, they lost the round in their game. Unseo says they did it again, and Songhwan says the newbie was in charge of cleaning. Ariam thinks that since she cleaned the ramen, she could ask the boss for a bonus, but she bumps her head into a man's body, and both fall to the ground. The girl apologizes and asks if the gentleman is okay, but he suffers from his wrist, telling her to be careful as it seemed he had broken his limb. Ariam cries, asking to call an ambulance, and Kang questions if it was really broken. Jian judges by the hand movement, saying there's a possibility of a fracture, and to check the injury, he needs to touch the hand and observe the man's response. Kang approaches, questioning if he can touch there, and the man allows the boss. When touched, he says it hurt while groaning in pain, and Jian checks the ligaments and joints, saying the wrist was sprained. Then the protagonist informs that the bone was fine, and it was just a sprain, and he would give a massage to make it hurt less. Songhwan comments that his Hyung was really good at massages, and Unseo says she will get hurt so he can massage her too. Jian mentions it will take 24 hours to recover, and he should not exert himself to avoid getting worse. The man asks about his work, as he has to cook in Gangwon tomorrow, and it was his food truck. There was an emergency film shoot, and they called his food truck too, and Ariam suggests helping him. The man questions if she can cook, but the girl says she was only good at making instant noodles. He sighs, responding that no matter how urgent it was, he couldn't serve instant noodles and needed someone good at cooking. Looking at the protagonist pleadingly, Jian analyzes that the answer was obvious, and he should just say yes. Kang tries to refuse, saying he needs to work, but the boss says he will pay 300,000 won if he helps. The protagonist considers a bit upon hearing about the money, patting the hand of his new temporary boss. The man says he felt honored that he was going to help him. He heard that the internet cafe gained a reputation because of the amazing food, so he came there to check, and it was so good that he comes every day. So he thought he could learn something by eating there every day, but if Kang is going to help with the food truck, it will be an honor to get some tips. The protagonist reflects that he hadn't tracked this area, and it was time to move and investigate other regions, and Jian responds that he can cover the investigation while working. The next morning, the truck speeds down the road. The man says Mr. Kang is a great driver and didn't think he could drive so smoothly. Today he will make sure to impress the actors with a delicious meal and thanks for the help. The man comments that the news exploded yesterday where an actor was caught at a party full of illicit substances, and they are going there. That movie was going to be released in about a week, and Kang questions if they can really release it. The man denies it because no one wants to see a movie with an actor addicted to substances, and now they were filming everything again, and it was chaos. He was grateful to be able to work on it, but the atmosphere was very intense, and they were filming all the scenes that had the actor. Kang questions why not delay the release, and the man responds that it was a special situation because they booked many cinemas and could lose them. It was director Sun Tae-min, who is one of the best directors for romance films in Korea, so it will be fine. Tae-min smokes the rest of his cigarette, saying everything was ruined. He repeats that he doesn't like this, looking downcast. His assistant questions if they should film again, and Tae-min responds that there is no more time and no choice but to fix this mess. All because of that damn bag of illicit substances. If he gets his hands on him, he would take his life, shouting for everyone in the studio to hear, and a girl approaches, saying the food truck was ready. His assistant advises eating and calming down a bit because the team was tired too. Tae-min freaks out, questioning if he thinks he could eat now, and if the movie fails, he would be in debt and they should send them away. But upon tasting the food, he asks why it tastes so good. Maybe he wasn't hungry anymore, and the assistant says this was totally insane, wanting to know if they put substances in the food while Tae-min tells him to stop talking about this subject. The original food truck chef hurt his wrist, so another chef was helping, and he was really impressive. That mountain setting was great too, and director Sun should stay positive and relax his shoulders a bit. Honestly, it was lucky that none of the other actors got into trouble, but suddenly a voice shouts Tae-min, warning that there was an accident. They both turn shocked at the bad luck. Shin Eun-ha says the stuntman hurt his ankle while filming. Something falls to the ground, and people run to the stuntman. He apologizes to the director, and says he should have been more careful. The director orders to call 119 and questions if there was anyone there who could provide first aid. But seeing that there was no one, he thinks it was over. cursing the world, while the truck chef says this movie was cursed, and questions if Kang In could handle something like this since he managed to fix his wrist earlier. The protagonist wonders if the man's ankle wasn't sprained and approaches the stuntman, telling him to take a look at his injury. Kang says he will only provide first aid, but he needs to send him to the hospital immediately, and Tae-min agrees. The protagonist calls Eun-ha a team member, leaving the girl confused. He asks if she could bring a compression bandage. Tae-min asks her to quickly get it, and the girl agrees, walking while thinking about what he called her. Eun-ha was an actress, although a supporting one. She hands over the bandages, and the protagonist thanks her, leaving the girl sulking in the corner. Surprised when the treatment ends, Ji-eun says the injured actor had a severe sprain in his ankle, but it wasn't as bad as they had described. Eun-ha asks if everything is okay, and the stuntman confirms, because it hurt a lot when he got injured, but now he feels his bones are in place, and he's fine and feels he can walk. But the protagonist says filming is still impossible. He had finished the temporary treatment, but it will be difficult to walk until he's fully recovered, and the assistant is surprised, saying they could just call another stuntman for this situation. Tae-min questions how they will find someone with a body and face similar to Kim Yoo-chan and bring him to the middle of the mountains. And when he arrives, they will have already missed the release date and will go bankrupt. Kim Yoo-chan says he can film the action scenes himself. The director says he's fragile, and if he injures his ankle, they're finished, and the whole movie would be doomed. Maybe they can film his face with a mask and sunglasses, and maybe that will work. Wondering if God can help in this torment because he doesn't mind paying double or triple. Kang just warns that the person sent by the heavens had arrived. He was just joking but needs to think if he can do it. Eun-ha says there's no chance because no matter how desperate they are, it wouldn't work because he's just an ordinary boss. Tae-min tells them to wait a minute, unable to hear. But now that he thinks about it, he really did look a bit like Kim Yoo-chan. Tae-min asks if he has any physical skills, and the protagonist confirms. The director wants to know if he could help a little because they would just apply some makeup, and he can fix it with CGI. It was a triple payment for this, and the director orders to start filming immediately while Eun-han and the assistant think they're finished. The scene where they were filming, Kim Yoo-chan, who was the male protagonist, saves his supporting actress, Shin Eun-ha. The original villain in this scene was the author, who was a substance user, and that's why they were filming everything again, asking him to listen carefully and stay with the actor to practice a bit because he's going outside to smoke some cigarettes. Kim Yoo-chan guides the protagonist, saying that here he swings his arm and hits the chin along with a knee strike. Kang questions if it won't look strange if all the movements are planned, and the supporting actors say it's true, but it's a simple choreography. Ji-eun explains they didn't need to film that way because he has some skills used for training manuals and requires practical movements, saying that instead, the three could attack as if it were real. They should act as if they want to fight him, and he will handle it appropriately to make it look more realistic on camera. Eun-ha hears the lines about it only working if the movie does well, and the success depends on them. Thinking about what he knows about filming because he doesn't know what he's talking about, Kang approaches director Tae-min, asking if he could film in one go without cuts. He was planning to go straight to action, and that way, they will save a lot of time, and Tae-min says if he can do it, it would be amazing, but it wasn't possible. Kang tells him to trust him because it was the power of a triple payment, then warns that he will go straight this way without any interruptions. Tae-min is shocked by this but opens a slightly hesitant smile, thinking that his director's instinct was telling him he was a trustworthy person. The filming begins, and Eun-ha lets out a scream, asking for help while the villains approach in that scene. They say they will torment her, and she must give everything she has. The protagonist suddenly kicks the door. He jumps from side to side while the villains wonder how this guy found them. The villains reflect that he told them to attack for real, but they still had to act as if they were fighting. One of the actors runs towards him. Ji-eun says he would guide him to where he could dodge. He would mark the punches in advance, telling the protagonist to go left, and thus he dodges the blow. Another villain advances and Kang goes to the right. His body was reacting before the instruction came. Ji-eun says that at this point, he can grab the opponent by the collar to get the best camera angle. The protagonist holds there, and the villain thinks this wasn't in the script. Kang throws him up and strikes his body consecutively. Then he advances towards the hooded villain. He asks to just continue with the script while screaming in fear. Kang hits his head with all his strength. The last villain wonders if this was in the script, and wants to know why the director wasn't calling for a cut since he doesn't care anymore. Then he advances towards him while screaming and tries a punch that the protagonist dodges, showing his defined abdomen as he gets up with a sit-up, striking the villain's head and kicking him up right after. The protagonist grabs a baton and hits him one last time. From director Tae-min and his assistant, Eun-ha, Kim Yoo-chan, and the other villains, they were all shocked and mentally calling the protagonist a crazy bastard. The protagonist walks towards Eun-ha. He says he came to save her. The girl stammers a bit, and asks if he will let her live while thinking this wasn't her script. The assistant cuts the scene with his clapperboard. He denies it, saying he told him to act as if he was hitting and not to hit for real, and after this incident, everyone would go to the hospital. Taemin thinks he was too blind to film the movie and wonders what he did, saying he should have stopped him, while a villain gets up and calls Mr. Nagang. Taemin is completely surprised that he got up. The villains question what he did because they were shocked since they weren't hurt even though they were hit. Honestly, they were scared because it seemed like he was really hitting them and want to know how he did it. Taemin wonders what they were talking about and if they were saying he didn't hit them, and the assistant calls for Kang, asking why he was hitting people for real and told him to act, and about the people he had hurt, but the three villains respond that they were completely fine. The assistant is puzzled upon hearing this, asking if they were all sure about it, and the villain replies that he doesn't know how, but one thing was certain. It was like a cushion or something, and it felt more like sliding than hitting. The assistant asks how, and the protagonist responds that it was exactly that. It was like sliding sideways on a cliff ski. The man turns to actor Kim, as he had been hit in the neck and even flew, questioning if he was hurt. But he replies that he wasn't hit, and just dodged his neck, and most of the problem was just the surprise. The assistant says his camera clearly filmed him being beaten, but they weren't feeling pain. But the director puts his hand on his shoulder, saying they can wrap up for the day. He laughs, saying he knew it, and that's why he didn't stop filming all this time. Now they must quickly review the footage and check if they captured it correctly. A few minutes later, they say it was better than expected, and even the expression when he was grabbed was perfect. Kim Yoo-chan says all the action was perfectly captured, and it was expected from the director, while another man says instead of saying he did well, they say it like this. But this actor was calculating the camera positions and moving with them. He just followed with the camera, and every angle became perfect in all of them. Kim Yoo-chan is shocked that he moved according to each camera from start to finish. Kang looks back and asks if his part was over now, while the director responds yes and was impressed. Thanks to him, it looked like a good Hollywood action movie, and Kang replies he was happy it turned out well. Taemin says everyone should take Kang in as inspiration and move on to the next scene and asks if Chul was okay. The professional actor says he acted really well and wants to know which agency he was from, and the protagonist replies he was from the food truck. Eun-ha gets angry, wondering if Yoo-chan is a fool because this wasn't even acting. These guys wouldn't get hurt for filming, and anyone could see how he hit them, and they were about to cry in pain. If the script told him to hit her too, Kang would have beaten the girl like any other. The protagonist passes by and waves at her. Eun-ha wonders why he was staring at her, and if he read her mind or something. Ji-in suddenly calls the agent's attention to something, saying that she detected a strange noise coming from this wall. The protagonist raises his eyes to the upper floor. Ji-in says the source of the strange noise was identified, and in a few moments, the debris will fall. When this structure breaks, the fragments will fly at the actors, and Kang thinks it was a sudden collapse. It would occur in 5 seconds, and the protagonist starts to move. Kang grabs Yi-chul's shirt, throwing him away while the actor asks what was happening. Eun-ha freaks out as there were only 3 seconds left. She asks to be saved, and the protagonist holds her in his arms, advancing with a stick in hand. At the mark of just 1 second, the other people in the studio wonder what was happening because the front part of the studio was collapsing. Kang manages to deflect some debris with his stick. Eun-ha calls for her mother and asks to be saved while crying. The protagonist mentally tells her to be quiet and keeps hitting. Ji-in gives him a warning, because the structure would collapse on a large scale. With the smoke starting to dissipate, Taemin and all the other actors were completely stunned. They ask if Shin Eun-ha was okay, and please, she should say the answer was yes. The girl was collapsed in the protagonist's arms. She gradually regains consciousness, screaming to be saved while Kang responds that the girl was still alive, questioning if she was very surprised, and the girl screams a few more times, because he had thrown Yoo-chan, and now he was trying to throw her too. Kang says no because the building collapsed, so he just saved her. The girl notices the whole place where they were, wondering what had happened there, and Kang responds that he doesn't know, and it was probably poorly built. Eun-ha looks sideways, because he had saved her and Yoo-chan from being crushed by those metal bars. Kang questions if she could get down now that she understands the situation. She is thrown away, questioning how he dares. Yoo-chan approaches, saying that he suddenly threw him, and he thought he had a grudge against him, but the protagonist denies it and asks if he was okay. The actor says that even though it seemed like he was thrown hard, he was completely fine, and the director approaches running, asking if they were okay, and Yoo-chan responds that Kang had saved him in an instant. Eun-ha looks at the protagonist before responding, seeing him turn until he looks into her eyes. She responds that everything was fine and thinks that maybe he wasn't a bad guy. Taemin thanks for that and thinks it was close, because if those metal bars had hit one of the actors now, In the worst case, someone would lose their life. And if an actor suffers that because they rushed the construction, especially with the substance scandal, their movie would be ruined. So Kang-in was their real superhero. The assistant calls for Tae-min and says they need to fix the studio, and the director responds wanting to know if it collapses again after the changes. A cameraman says they managed to capture the scene perfectly, and the two question what that means. He explains that he rolled the camera behind the scenes and managed to capture everything on tape, and they were lucky for that. Seeing the recording of Kang running with Eun-ha on his back and deflecting the beams to save the girl. Everyone is incredulous while watching it. Tae-min questions how he filmed that, causing confusion over who filmed it. They celebrate because it looked like a Hollywood movie, and they got a scene like that without even planning it. Tae-min says this will be huge and it was the birth of an iconic scene while the assistant apologizes, but it would ruin his party. This scene was too good to just throw away, but it was still an accident and not a planned scene. Questioning what would happen if people found out it was a real accident, and Tae-min responds that they would be very hated. But no one got hurt, and they can use this to boost the movie, and if a problem like this arises, their lawyers could handle it. The assistant questions if Kang-in, who is in the footage, asks not to use it. Tae-min runs towards his savior, calling his name. Then he questions about the recent accident, first expressing his gratitude for saving his actors. Ji-in mentally notes that rescuing civilians was part of her mission, and Kang responds that he just did what needed to be done. Tae-min asks about the scene where he rescued them, as they accidentally filmed it, and it looked great, suggesting they could use it in the movie. He even offers to credit him in the final scene, but Ji-in says it could interfere with the mission if her identity is exposed, though the director offers more money. She changes her mind, and Kang agrees to let them use his image in the film. The manager approaches Eun-ha and asks if she is okay, as she seemed really down earlier, and the girl confirms. Looking to her side where Kang is standing, she notices a scratch on his back, asking if he got hurt because his back was scratched, and Kang says it was just his fragile clothes. Eun-ha thinks she was almost crushed by a metal bar, but he saved everyone, without even getting a scratch, which was really impressive. Blushing, she thanks the protagonist, and Kang says he was just doing his job. The girl shouts that she wasn't a crew member but an actress, and the protagonist replies that it was a joke. But since his work was done, he will return to the food truck, and Tae-min agrees while thanking him once more, saying the food there was also amazing, and he seemed young but talented. Eun-ha asks where he usually works, and the assistant replies that it's at an internet cafe. The girl asks if he won't return after helping them today, and Tae-min says he will ask him to help tomorrow and the day after as well. With this guy helping, the movie would be the best action film, and Eun-ha calls for the director, because her movie was a romantic comedy instead of action. Tae-min responds that the genre doesn't matter. If they cut all scenes with that and replace them with action, they will solve all the problems piling up in front of them. The assistant says they are running out of time and will hire a stunt double quickly, and Tae-min questions why bother with this pointless effort. He just saw Kang-in calculating all movements in real time, and the assistant agrees. Tae-min says time is what they desperately need, and no one can solve this except Kang. No acting license was needed anyway, as Kang was much better than Kim Yi-chan earlier. The assistant questions about the food, as he heard Kang-in only came to replace the chef because of his injury. Tae-min responds that there's no need to talk anymore and will handle this problem himself, running while calling Kang-in to start, and the assistant wonders if the movie will turn out okay. Outside, the protagonist comments that this place seemed fine and suddenly collapsed, in the middle of filming and where an actor was, which was a bit suspicious. Ji-in analyzes the visual data and estimates it might have been intentional damage done before the collapse. Kang says he thought the same, and someone set this up beforehand, while Ji-in notes that several metals went towards Eun-ha, and it could be someone after her role. Someone was targeting the actress or even the film itself, wanting it to fail. Tae-min runs to the protagonist, asking if they can talk for a moment, holding his hand and begging to save his film. The director explains the whole situation of the film, and Ji-in says the geography of the area was identical to her data, and the information value was very low, while Kang says he has to work in Seoul and can't keep going there. Tae-min says starting tomorrow, they will move all additional filming to Seoul. Kang tries to say he also needs to work, but the director responds that he doesn't need to worry as he only needs to go during the current filming. He will ensure the payment is solid, and the company wasn't in a position to save money now, while Ji-in advises him to accept. The protagonist agrees, asking to read the script, and the negotiation takes place. Sun Tae-min, who had slowed down due to his frustration, regained his speed and showed his talent when Kang-in appeared. Although all additional scenes filmed in the collapsed field were cancelled, the best scenario began to take shape. In the morning, the actors and team were advancing to film, and in the afternoon, thanks to Kang-in's effect, the atmosphere was calm and light. A car approaches the drift area, Manager Kim from Ticho Entertainment runs towards the studio, calling out director Sun Tae-min's name, and asks him to please save them, since if they release the film in its original form, they will become nothing, and the film will be horrible, besides getting into trouble. He knows they can't delay the release date, and his company has already secured most of the theaters using their resources. Tae-min tells him to just trust him as he will solve all their problems, and Kim tells him to stop bluffing. He should just say how things are going to report to the superiors, and the director says he is doing it this way and will change the film's genre. Starting today, it will be a romantic comedy with action, and the manager questions if he is crazy, because they only have 1 week left for additional filming and editing, but they can't change the genre now, and Tae-min remains calm. They were working on it, and will show him during dinner later, but someone else opens the door. The director questions who he was, because it was crazy to kick the door during a recording like this, and dust was flying everywhere now. Manager Kim is startled when the person enters, bowing to his boss while saying he didn't expect to see him in person. The man looks to the side. Tae-min quickly recognizes President Lee Tae-hoo from the Ticho company. The president approaches, saying he didn't want to come there because he doesn't want to burden a filming location. But an accident happened in a studio like this, and there was no other way but to go there. The manager says it was a mistake while they were working, and Tae-hoo responds that it was his department's job to prevent mistakes. Wanting to know how long he will continue helping that damn drug addict, a little girl runs into the studio. She asks if her dad was angry, being Lee Min-ji, Tae-hoo's daughter and a child actress. Min-ji says she heard his angry voice, so she followed him, and Tae-hoo responds that he wasn't angry, but it was noisy there, so he had to speak loudly. The director goes to talk to the little girl, and she treats him well. Tae-hoo questions if the director can finish all filming and editing in a week and give a clear answer. He confirms and will do better than the original. The president says it was expected from a veteran Chung Muro director who does a great job. Tae-min mentions someone named Kang In who is incredible at fighting and has Hollywood-level skills for action scenes, so they can save the film. The president says if the director says so, he must be very impressive, and it seemed like he recruited him in a hurry, showing where the guy was while walking out of the studio. Tae-min points to the food truck. A light illuminates the president's face as he looks at the protagonist. He was wearing a mask on his face while turning a perfect pot of rice. Tae-hoo says then the master of fried rice was the martial arts director Na Kang-in. Tae-min confirms, and the president questions why he was cooking, but the director just says it was because he came with the truck all this way. The president is completely shocked to receive the information, because then director Tae-min was saying that he left the martial arts direction to this guy and even kept him as the leader in Kim Yu-chan's action scenes, and questions if he was joking with him. In this urgent situation, he was bringing an amateur to save it. Tae-min questions what he was talking about, and the president says the film was cursed anyway, so he was trying to save extra money. The director tries to say that's not it, and if he sees results, he will understand. Tae-hoo says he must send all production expenses without leaving out a cent. The director even runs after him intending to reverse the decision, but Tae-hoo tells the manager to get all receipts and check every detail. Near the food truck, Min-ji shouts that it was really delicious and wants to know what snack it was. Khan explains it was called a mix, and the little girl complains that the name was strange, but the taste was incredible. The protagonist says he made a lot for the team, so she can eat as much as she wants. Min-ji complains she can't eat much because her mom said she would gain weight if she did, and Kang says she could still gain a little. She responds that there's no way because she's the lead actress in this film, so she needs to take care of her appearance. Even as a child actress, if she plays the same role, she can be the protagonist, and Kang says he was right. She asks the protagonist to make more snacks later, but the young man responds that he would like to, but they will be filming in Seoul and there won't be a food truck. Min-ji suggests grabbing some now and hiding them in her father's car for later, and Kang suggests she could go to the internet cafe sometimes, and he would make a little. The girl takes out a cell phone and gets excited, asking him to give his number to talk to him later, and she will save it as Snack Guy, and Kang agrees. The assistant runs towards President Tae-hoo, asking him to please take a look. He knew that director Tae-min was a perfectionist who rarely gets satisfied with the results, but when Na Kang-in came from the food truck, he was getting excited, and this could say everything to him. Tae-hoo agrees and says he will see what they filmed, approaching the computer and going completely crazy when the footage starts. Tae-hoo tells him to wait a minute and wants to know when he managed to add the CGI, and even added choreography scenes for him to be able to film that. Tae-min responds that they didn't have time for any CGI, and it was the normal footage without editing, and he didn't do it alone. The actor calculated every angle where he could be captured on camera and was moving accordingly, and Tae-hoo is incredulous about it, saying that an amateur coming from the food truck managed to film in one take without any pause and he managed to calculate where the lights would fall. The director confirms because the construction had collapsed but Na Kang saved them in the moment of crisis. Tae-ho says he should apologize to director Sun for his earlier comments. He felt sorry for the misunderstanding, but Tae-min responds that he understands and if he hadn't seen the footage, he would have thought it was just idiotic for that. Both decide to go thank the food guy. Khan finishes cooking a little more snacks. Tae-ho approaches and says hello to him. The protagonist says he just did it, but the president says he wasn't there for the snacks. He introduces himself as President Lee Tae-ho of the investment company Techo, and it seemed he saved the film, so he came to thank him personally. Khan says he was just doing his job and mostly for money. The president comments on his martial arts and asks what the food was. The protagonist responds that it was sweet popcorn and he should give it a try. Tae-ho thinks he ate a lot during his military service and really didn't like it but has to thank Mr. Kang, becoming completely shocked when he tastes the food. He shouts that it was unbelievable and tasted like a pancake with a very magical flavor. His daughter would absolutely love something like that, and Kang says Min-ji had already come and taken some. The president says he hopes his daughter thanked him properly, calling Min-ji to eat snacks with her father, but the girl wasn't nearby. The president wonders where his daughter went, and Kang is surprised, questioning Ji and where Min-ji was. The system responds that it couldn't locate her in the recorded footage, wondering if she could be inside the building, but there was no sign of Min-ji nearby. The young man's phone rings with the little girl calling. He decides to answer and the president questions how he knew his daughter's number, so Kang explains he got the number earlier, answering and saying hello, but his mood becomes tense. Tae-ho approaches calling for Mr. Na Kang-in, questioning why he seemed so upset. The protagonist continues walking around there. He questions Ji and why it seemed like Min-ji dropped her phone and broke it, but the robot says the sound was different. He begins to replicate the information recorded in the call. The analysis results enter the protagonist's mind. The sound of air came from a light object trapped in an outer layer, and the sound of reinforced plastic pressed with metal echoing inside a confined space. Khan mentally repeats these clues, thinking that if it was a confined space, it would be a car. Elsewhere, some men discuss who kidnaps someone and leaves them with a phone, but the other didn't know. He had taken the girl in a hurry, so it must have been fine, and the boss says the fact that he broke it was suspicious in case they called again and didn't answer, questioning who she called, and the man responds that it was someone called Snack Guy. In any case, they should leave the car quietly and get out before anyone notices. Tae-ho calls for Mr. Na Kang-in, asking what was wrong. After receiving a call from his daughter, he became serious and said nothing, questioning why he was making him so nervous. Ji analyzes that the individual rescue mode was activated, noticing Min-ji's bag on the ground. The girl's backpack and snack were in front. The tracks lead to that black car in the corner of the parking lot. Kang looks coldly and starts running while the president just shouts his name, falling silent upon noticing the backpack on the ground. He says it was his daughter's and raises his head, wondering what it could be. The driver of the bandits is surprised. Then he informs his boss that someone was coming this way, and the man shouts that he was an insane bastard, because he was reporting this calmly, and should speed up the car soon. The car moves, and Jian says it was definitely the enemy. They had noticed the agent, and Kang responds that he knew. The AI says it was good equipment for dealing with vehicles and he should use the plate. Kang grabs it with his hand, using his strength to lift it from the ground. Then he advances forward as fast as he can. The kidnappers comment that that guy was running after them. Their boss wonders if he was insane because he thought he could capture a car just by running, and sometimes someone did the impossible. Only in this case, he should speed up the car even more. Min-ji looks back, thinking about the snack guy, her father, and her mother. The driver tells his boss that he was done for. That man says he probably got exhausted and collapsed, so they shouldn't worry about him and just keep driving. But the protagonist leaps from the ground, advancing with his superhuman speed. The kidnapper's boss is left speechless upon seeing this. Kang stops on top of the car, scaring everyone. He spins the plate in his hand with immense dexterity, embedding it in the middle of the car and making the kidnappers scream. They want to try to figure out what the hell that was and how this bastard got there. The boss orders to drive and knock that lunatic down soon. Kang tells Jian to find a way to stop the car, and the artificial intelligence tells him to look at the bumper, because if he pierces that place vertically, the engine would stop immediately. Kang removes the plate from inside the car and holds it even tighter, embedding it directly into the car's engine. The kidnappers look at him in fear, calling that man a lunatic while Kang just stares at them. The boss says this guy wouldn't let them leave and should hit the brakes to throw him off. The driver just obeys the order, throwing the protagonist off the top of the car. Min-ji cries, afraid of losing the snack guy. The people watching from afar are shocked, calling for Min-ji and Mr. Na Kang-in. The kidnapper's boss laughs at the protagonist, saying it was an emergency brake. If he goes like that and acts rudely, he would lose his life, but the protagonist performs a perfect acrobatic move and lands correctly on the ground, looking directly at the kidnappers while Jian says he successfully conducted the vehicle's brakes. The driver says that guy had been thrown far away, but nothing happened. Then his boss orders to speed up the car and hit him so they can get out of the place. But their car doesn't move, and the boss gets furious, asking what he was doing. Then he notices that damn guy was aiming at the car's engine from the start. He starts hitting one of his subordinates, ordering not to just watch and go take that guy's life, because he will keep holding the child in the car. Both leave and call Kong a bastard, wanting to know what the hell he was. But the protagonist just responds that his identity was being Batman. They don't understand the reference, and the protagonist continues advancing, saying it was a name from outside Korea and then kicks one of them. The man is thrown far away thanks to the force of the impact, groaning in pain while the driver approaches, and the protagonist goes to the car. He draws a knife, saying it was too fast for his eyes to follow. Kong strikes him on the chin using his heel, backing away and maintaining his fighting stance, then quickly walks towards the car. The boss inside the windows calls for God while he was shocked with fear. Minji tries to speak but had her mouth covered. The boss asks if he thought he was scared just because he had subdued everyone at once. But the protagonist touches the glass, telling Minji not to worry because he will save her. The little girl's eyes light up immediately. Kong asks what the plan is to subdue the kidnapper, and Jian suggests jumping into the car and persuading him or luring him out of the car. The protagonist decides it would be better to lure him out and deal with it because Minji wouldn't get hurt, and Jian tells him to move away from the car. To make the enemy lower his guard, they need to go as far away as possible, and the enemy won't come until he feels safe. She recommends a distance of 15 meters, and the boss wonders why he was retreating and if that means he won't attack. Then he thinks he needs to get out of there quickly before these guys reach him. The boss opens the door, cursing the world, while shouting for them to get a car and placing a knife near the little girl. They shouldn't dare call the police if they want the child to lose her life, and Kong thinks this was a trashy bastard. Tae-ho cries while shouting his daughter's name. He tells manager Kim to hurry and tell this guy to get the car. Then he runs towards them, shouting that he will give the car, but if he touches a finger on Min-ji, he will destroy his 10th generation. The boss thinks that's it, and with a sick smile accepts, telling him to bring the car himself while the manager calls the sir. The subordinates wonder if they won't call the police, but decide to call secretly. Tae-ho gets into a luxury car thinking of his daughter, saying that daddy will come to her, and she should just wait a little longer. The man drives towards the enemy. Jian warns that providing transportation for the enemy means increasing the chances of him escaping with the victim, and Kong responds that he knows. Tae-ho opens the door saying he brought the car and was there, but he shouldn't touch a finger on his daughter. Minji cries while calling for her father mentally. The kidnapper orders the president to put his hands up and approach calmly, while breathing heavily and pointing the knife at him. Tae-ho moves away from the car and the killer keeps going, but the president realizes what he had done and starts running towards them, shouting that his father will save little Minji. The kidnapper orders not to come because he would really cut her and not hesitate to do it. Kong is surprised to see that with blood splattering from afar. Tae-ho and Minji are shocked when they see the kidnapper fall to the ground and drop his knife. Kong had thrown something from afar, thinking it was a direct hit. Jian analyzes that the enemy was hit using long-range equipment, a stone. The president runs towards his daughter and hugs her, while removing the tape from the girl's mouth, and she breaks down crying. With the sunset of that simple day, the employees comment that those bastards had broken ribs, injured jaws, and one of them was hit in the head. Everyone was in terrible condition, especially the one hit by the stone. It looked like a fracture and they should call an ambulance to send him to the hospital. Tae-ho approaches questioning why send them to the hospital first as if they did something good. His daughter, who was almost kidnapped, should be treated first, and the employee says they can't leave him like that because it seems they will take 3 weeks to recover. Minji calls her father and asks if the snack guy will be arrested, and turns to Kong questioning if he will go to prison because of her. But the protagonist tells her not to worry because just as her father saved her, he will save him too. Jian warns that if he planned to escape the police, now is the time, and thinks that if he is smart, he will understand how to save with his influence, but thinks that saying the father saved her in front of Min-ji made him seem better than he should. Tae-ho says that Mr. Nakongin was the hero who saved his daughter, and even if these guys lose their lives, he was innocent. The man says they need evidence, and the president responds that they were on the mountain, and there was no way there could be something like that. Suddenly director Tae-min appears behind him saying that he has it. There were the recordings of his film, and he has something much more valuable than camera footage, showing everyone the video, where the employees are amazed because the faces of the kidnappers were captured clearly. It was true that the three threatened the child and Mr. Nakongin. The employee questions how he managed to film it, and Tae-min responds that the place was full of cameramen, and when something starts, the cameras turn. Na Kangin was the hero who saved everyone and was absolutely innocent, with Jian sighing as she ends the escape protocol. Taeho approaches, saying that even if the head of the kidnappers ends up lifeless, there would be no punishment for Mr. Na Kangin. If someone tries to punish him even after watching the footage, it will show how competent his public relations team was, because his officers will be full of excuses. Kam walks away, saying it was close to dinner time and they shouldn't worry because he won't run away. Later at the food truck, the protagonist prepares a chocolate cake. Mi-jin asks if he made it, and Kam responds that he knows she doesn't eat much, but she should try a little. Jian explains that tactical desserts boost allies' morale, and the protagonist urges her to try it because it was delicious. Taeho says his Min-ji was too shocked earlier to eat a snack and asks if it was good. Then he begs for a piece, saying it was better than the cookies before. The president questions how he did it because he wants to try making it at home with Min-ji, but the food truck chef says a normal person can't replicate it. First, they need a lot of strength to mix and combine the ingredients at that speed, and it was like art. Questioning if he is a professional chef and if that was the explanation, but Kang responds that he works at a lawn house that serves food. The president is completely astonished until an angry voice from afar catches his attention. She yells Taeho's name, asking how he dared to be eating at a time like this, being Min-ji's mother, Jang Mi-young. Mi-young slaps his face, saying her daughter was almost kidnapped, and he was there eating snacks. She questions if Min-ji was okay and if she got hurt anywhere, and notices she was dirty. Taeho says he knows it will seem strange, but there was a reason for it. The wife continues hitting him even without him saying anything, and Taemin comments that they were seeing many sides of the boss today. His manager tells him to calm down because many people were watching this now. She will take care of him quietly without any police or witnesses, and Taeho pleads to be spared. Mi-young thanks the protagonist for saving her daughter. Kang responds that it was only natural, and the woman says everyone who saw the video talked about how he saved her. The young man had jumped in front of a car, stopped it, and fought with an armed guy, and Jian comments that the agent wasn't in danger. Kang responds that it was normal, and Mi-young is impressed while the little girl runs to him, telling him not to forget he promised to make more snacks and desserts too, while the protagonist agrees but asks her to call first. Mi-young informs her husband that she will go home first since their daughter has homework, and Taeho responds that he will check the situation a bit more. After they are alone, the president says that if it weren't for Mr. Na Kangin, he and his wife would be in despair now, thanking him once again because he will treat him much better next time. Kang decides to accept, saying it seemed like a good offer. Suddenly, another person calls for President Taeho, asking him to go over there, and Eun-ha sighs behind the protagonist, commenting that she saw today that he did action scenes and even took down kidnappers, so the rumor that he works at the lawn house was a lie. Kang denies it, and she asks where it was because she should get the address and phone number. The protagonist types on the phone and saves it with his name. The girl thanks him and blushes a little, saying for him not to get the wrong idea because she didn't ask for his number, but it was just to visit the lawn house. Kang looks back with a blank face, thinking he didn't know the lawn house's number anyway, and the girl says if he looks that way, she will blush. Until a shout interrupts their conversation, asking who uploaded the video on the internet. Among all the people there, who the heck posted the video of his daughter's rescue on YouTube? He gathers everyone from the studio and says it must be one of them there. Manager Kim approaches, saying the head of public relations was calling. He asks if Min-ji was okay, and the president responds that it was clear because, as he saw, the hero had saved her and first must take down all the videos. The chief responds that it was difficult to stop since it was spreading across the entire internet, and not just the news. Taeho orders to find the original leaker, and the chief responds that he will do his best. The director shouts that he would spare the life of whoever confesses, and his assistant tries to calm him down. Taeho calls his wife, who was in the car, and answers quickly. She questions what he did this time, but the president tells her to listen without being angry, because it was about the rescue video of Min-ji that had been leaked all over the internet, and was spreading too fast to stop. But she shouldn't worry because they will find the one who leaked it, and Mi-young responds that it was their daughter. The president is left speechless upon hearing this. Mi-young explains that earlier when she saw the video, she got excited, saying that the snack guy looked like a hero and sent it to the internet. She said the hero needed to be widely known, and Mi-young agreed with her, questioning where the problem was until director Taemin calls for the president, saying he was very disappointed with him now. Taeho tries to calm him and asks him to listen, but the director says he couldn't count on him. The next day at the internet cafe, the girls comment that this was crazy. It looked like a promotional video for that movie, and if someone jumped on a car like that, they would lose their life. Eun-seo invites Aryam to watch the movie when it comes out, and the girl agrees, while Song-hwan asks if he can join. Aryam says that anyway, that guy looked like Kang-in. Seo responds that the quality was too low to see clearly, but the body shape was similar, but there was no way he would appear in a video like that. Her friend agrees, saying that even if it was Kang in, it would be too much. But anyway, she wants to know when he will return because they miss him. The protagonist wears a mask and a cap to hide his face, landing several kicks on some actors playing the role of thugs. He hides behind a post to dodge the shots, then advances at a surprising speed and strikes with a kick to the face of the armed thug. Kang heads towards Eun-ha. The girl looks at him with a bright expression, and the director cuts at that moment, switching the protagonist with actor Kim Yoo-chan. Thus, the movie starts once again, and the actor questions if the poor princess was unarmed. The director cuts and thanks everyone for their hard work, commenting that Kang In's action scene was perfect. But when Eun-ha looked at Yoo-chan, her eyes were different, and her face had changed. While Eun-ha responds that the director must be tired from staying there all night. Taemin runs towards the protagonist, thanking him because the filming flowed quickly, then asks if everything was okay for today, and Taeho responds that yes, the action scenes were only tomorrow and thanks him. The protagonist questions about the status of Min Ji's rescue video, and the director begins to explain. The video had been exposed internationally, and news was circulating, but strangely people thought it was a trailer, so they silenced the witnesses and increased the story of it being a trailer, and Kang questions if the gentleman was okay. Taeho questions how he thought a father would feel when the rescue video of his daughter was the most viewed in the world. And anyway, he thanks again because they managed to make this movie, and the director says they managed to finish the extra filming ahead of schedule. Shin Eun-ha was a supporting actress, but the script changed, and now she was one of the protagonists, and the girl thanks. Taeho says he would like to buy some drinks for the protagonist today. Eun-ha and Yoo-chan had worked hard too, so they all go together, and the director will stay there editing. Jian asks the protagonist to accept because it was the promise from before, and Kang agrees. The artificial intelligence comments that it seemed to be a very expensive place. The drinks were good too, so he should drink as much as he wants, and Jian comments that this robot was unexpectedly wild. Eun-ha grabs a bottle of drink asking for Kang's glass, while Yoo-chan says he will pour the drink for him first. Both argue over who will pour the protagonist's drink because they both owed him. Meanwhile, President Tae-hoo fills his glass, and Kang thanks him. The president starts to tell that he always dreamed of being a film director. Since high school, he was around the industry and even filmed some independents a few times, but they had all been disasters. After making many bad films, he realized he had no talent for the area, and his father asked him to join the company, so he turned to production. Yoo-chan asks him to stay positive because he still had success in the industry, and Taeho says that with wealth, everyone would be in his position. If the film had failed, his company would be in danger, and Kang says maybe it was because he didn't work for his father. Taeho says his father owned a military equipment production company known in the field. His father had given some funds to the company, and would never sell their help. But to tell the truth, he invested 10 billion in this film, and used the funds as collateral. Eun-ha questions this, and Taeho says if the film fails, he will beg his father for help, but he will hit him with a golf club. She is shocked by this because he was over 40, and the president responds that those funds should never be touched anyway. Yoo-chan says the man was ambitious, and the president questions if it makes sense for the film to fail. That was the reason he bet and invested by himself. Just thinking about that dependent who got on his nerves. They question the name of his father's company, and if it was known. Hearing the name Iron Qigong Engineering, Jian informs the agent that their data had information related to it. They produced combat equipment used in some regions in 2082, and their data includes that the 2024 model was the last. He questions this, and Jian explains it was old but was the main combat means in some places, and used products were traded at high prices, and Iron Qigong was expensive military equipment, and Kang wonders how it could stop after 2024, and suddenly, they will go bankrupt this year, so something would be strange. Because of the substance incident, the construction collapse, and Min Ji's kidnapping, everything could be connected. Taeho asks why Mr. Kang Na-in seems so irritated, and if something was wrong. The protagonist says it wasn't him and had a problem with Mr. Lee, because if his film fails, the funds will run out, and he can't put his father's company at risk. Taeho says only if he loses his funds, but he will tell his father, and they will be safe, but Kang denies it. I don't think the situation was so simple now. He had been suspicious for a few days, and on the first day, the studio in Gangwon collapsed, someone had broken in, and it wasn't a natural accident. Taeho says he heard him mention it, and the police conducted an investigation at the studio, and it was analyzed by the National Forensic Service. They will probably say there is a possibility of sabotage, but there is no definitive evidence. And a week ago, the lead actor was arrested at a party with substances, and that seems strange. When the arson investigation was done in Seoul, the police accidentally discovered it. Kang agrees because the arsonist incident was not in someone's plans. Because they invaded the substance party, Ticho had to film the movie in a week, but if it hadn't happened, something could occur. The incident happened before the film was released. If they had waited to release the party report, everything bad would have happened. Yuchul says his film wouldn't be able to pay the cinemas and would be fired after the release. Kang says when the film fails, the plan would be to ask his father for help, and Taeho says yes, and he would send money to protect funds. The protagonist suggests if it's someone's plan, and when the film fails, his father's company would also be marked. Iron Qigong Engineering would be in a situation where it can help Lee's company, and Taeho thinks they couldn't help. Even if that's the case, he will use all his connections, and if he has to sell the company to keep his father's funds safe. But Kang suggests if Min Ji is kidnapped. The man is shocked to hear this. He continues that Mr. Taeho would have to share his funds, thinking he wouldn't just lose 10 billion. But if his daughter were kidnapped, he would handle the collapse, and all his connections would be trapped, unable to help. Yuchul says the reason people kidnapped, and Kang continues it was for Mr. Lee to lose his sanity and make it easier to mark the funds. Taeho says he didn't plan to go to the studio that day, and Kang mentions that he went there anyway when he collapsed during the first day. The president agrees, and Kang says that the person who collapsed the studio knew Mr. Lee and Min Ji that day. Woon-ha questions if he was saying someone collapsed the studio to hurt her, and Kang says they were targeting an incident. If someone got hurt, there would be chaos, making it easier to kidnap Min Ji. The girl says that if they investigate the kidnapping, they might find the person behind it, and Kang says it can't be handled easily. At the police station, they complain that this bastard doesn't know anything. The three thugs were sitting in the chair. That policeman says he heard about a kidnapped girl who was the daughter of a billionaire. But since the mountain area has no footage, they couldn't capture him and question who spread the rumor. His colleague responds that no one knows clearly, and just said someone from above had ordered it. They must investigate this immediately because there was no footage in the area. Back at the restaurant, Kang says this scenario would be if the film fails, but they should take it as an interesting story. And Eun-ha says that not only with action but it was amazing for writing scenarios. They joke about who will be the protagonist in this film, but Taeho seemed completely apprehensive. A few hours later, they finish drinking and wonder if they should get more drunk. Yu-chan says goodbye to the gentleman, and Eun-ha accompanies him. Kang thinks he almost got it right this time and can't bet the Iron Qigong Company's funds again. They must be strong not to try something so dangerous, and with all variables removed, they should be safe this year. But Eun-ha suddenly calls for the protagonist, asking if he wants to drink once more with her. Kang agrees to drink with the three, and the girl gets annoyed with this. In another room, the father calls his son a damned idiot, because he dared to use company funds to make a film, being the CEO of Cheolin Engineering, Lee Young-min. Taeho responds that the film won't fail, and if it's vital, the company will grow and enhance the corporation's image. His brother Tae-sung says the mood was bad, and he really was like that. The president comments that the company developed an incredible product and exported well, and Tae-sung responds that there were hostile rumors. Their funds were solid, and it seemed like everyone gave up, irritating Taeho, saying that one of these might be the people behind Min Ji's kidnapping, and Tae-sung questions if he will raise his voice in front of his father. One of the companies might have made a film, but brokers wanted to take over his company, which was suspicious. First, they must fix things and ask if he's sure the film will succeed, and Taeho confirms. It had turned out much better than the original, and Young-min questions if it was thanks to the doubled action. The president responds that it was thanks to Mr. Na Kang-in, and thus they can film the movie faster, and it was all because of him. Tae-sung says he was just good at praising actors, and the president says he wasn't ordinary. Young-min says that if his company was doing well, they could attack someone coming from outside, and Tae-sung agrees because they can defend themselves. The CEO calls for his son, warning that if he touches the funds again, he will disinherit him, and Taeho agrees because it won't be repeated. Thinking it was thanks to Mr. Na Kang-in, Tae-sung tells him to get the action actor and give him a role in as many films as possible, and if he can help him, he will be paid again. He says Mr. Na Kang-in was already at a level beyond where he could offer a role. At the internet cafe, Eun-seo receives an invitation to the premiere of the film called Sunny Day. She responds that she's not sure and doesn't have time today, but Kang tells her not to worry if she's busy. Aryam questions about her, and Song-hwan does the same. The girl says she was fine, and newcomers started working with them, and cleaning robots do a better job than him. The promotional video they saw recently was the film Mr. Kang had participated in, and that's what happened. No wonder it looks so similar to Kang-in in that promotional video, and since it was the debut work, they will definitely go see it. The three say it was right, and they will maintain loyalty while Kang comments not to skip the part-time work. At the cinema in the city of Seoul, some reporters ask Mr. Yu-chan to take a look as well, showing a thumbs up to the spotlights. Another one of them asks Ms. Shin Eun-ha to give a heart, and the girl does. The group comments that there were many celebrities there to see the movie premiere. Eun-seo questions why Kang was standing there, and the young man says his face didn't appear in the movie. Yoo-chan smiles upon noticing the protagonist from afar. The protagonist notes that he had realized this. Jian informs the agent about it. He continues to get it right, and Aryam suddenly hits the protagonist while shouting, asking if he saw it because Kim Yoo-chan had waved at her, and Song-hwan says he was probably doing it for the reporters. Eun-ha notices it was the protagonist, and decides to speak casually, waving at him, but Song-hwan thinks it's for him, saying that the goddess Eun-ha had looked at him, and Aryam says it was probably for the reporters. They continue arguing, and Kang questions where Eun-seo was, seeing that she was around there. Aryam asks if Eun-seo was trying to get an autograph, and Song-hwan approaches, speaking to the deity. Kang questions if the two knew each other, and both confirm. Eun-ha questions how he knew Mr. Kang-in, and Eun-seo responds that her uncle owns the internet cafe, and he works there. The blonde says they knew each other but had different last names. They had lived in the same neighborhood when they were children and knew all her embarrassing stories. Yoo-chan complains that he waved his hand a lot earlier, and it hurts, while the protagonist says there were many reporters for him to act as if he knew them. Aryam says Kang-in was talking on equal terms with the great Yoo-chan, and Eun-seo was speaking on equal terms with Shin Eun-ha. Song-hwan suggests he might start acting, but Aryam looks at him shamefully. Minji runs towards the protagonist, calling for the snack uncle. The protagonist questions how she was, and the girl says she was no longer bored. Mi-young approaches, saying they reserved good seats for Mr. Na Kang-in, and Aryam is surprised by them. The protagonist says he already has a ticket, and Tae-ho tells them to leave it empty because he is a lead actor. Song-hwan says he could learn to cook and have another job too and be the next celebrity. Inside the Pack Cinema, they gather. Taemin says it would be nice if Mr. Kang-in had joined the acknowledgements, and Kang denies it because he didn't want his face to be famous since he is not an actor. The director says this film would have only one premiere, and if it weren't for Kang-in, they would have difficulty releasing it. Then thanks him and notes that the film was starting. Kang lifts his head and begins to focus. All his friends watch excitedly. Outside, the staff notice a lot of noise coming from the cinema room, including applause, and they comment that the audience was doing it together and usually watch quietly. But now this film was fun. The cinema stage lights turn on to indicate the film is over. A person claps while standing up because of the film. Jian says that if it weren't for their help, they would have done just an ordinary job. But the quality increased significantly, and Kang says it was fun. The audience comments that the film passed in an instant and was incredible, and now the stage interview with the actors will begin. Taemin thanks everyone for coming and watching. Currently, he will confess about the work to the audience. The scenes where there was a collapse in the studio were real scenes, and if they find out, some members will say it wasn't right. But he assures that they didn't do it intentionally and simply used the footage with everyone's consent. But it was clear that no one got hurt, and if there were any casualties, they would never have used it. Kang thinks that public opinion might get worse, and it's something the public relations team will handle later. A reporter introduces himself as Kim, and says he has a question for Eun-ha and wants to know if she received treatment for the incident. Because in the film, she seemed shocked. However, the girl says she was completely healthy and was rescued safely. He questions about Yoo-chan, and he responds that he probably wouldn't be in this world if he got hurt. His food truck uncle did it. Since he has a body like his, he asked him to stay there since he worked hard, and Kang thinks for him not to look in his direction. As he was a civilian, he should omit this from the article. In communities all over the internet, people comment that this was the best film they had seen, regretting having spoken badly about it. 2 days later, Aryam says that her film had been a success. Kang questions why she was calling it that, and the girl says that he was like family to her, so the film was his. The protagonist says that he made a film and that was enough, while Aryam complains that she would like to see a celebrity again. He complains that he was busy with other things, and she questions what he was doing as the boss at the internet cafe. The protagonist responds that it was a special mission for the Union of the Earth. Aryam stares at him and says that he was definitely crazy. Elsewhere, Tae-ho laughs with happiness, saying that they managed to do it, and the director says that everything would work out. But there was no way his film could be bad for the audience, and he was confident it would hit 10 million admissions. Tae-ho says that at this point, it won't take long, and Tae-min will be a viral director of 10 million. The performance on the first day was so bad that he almost cried, where theaters were empty. But now he was very happy. Taemin says that for the next film, he was considering a full-scale action, and Taemin says that he was an expert in romance and the action in the film was excellent. But the director mentions the name of Na Kang-in, because if they have him, they can skip the script work. Tae-ho calls for the director, asking if he wants to sign the film with them, because they will pay generously and use the action to boost the film, and the director accepts. The president questions if he had spoken with Mr. Na Kangin, and Taemin says he will try now. Kang receives a call on his cell phone, thinking it was an unknown number, and hangs up. On a radio show, the host says they were bringing two special guests from the film Sunny Day. They welcome Kim Yoo-chan and Shin Eun-ha, asking how they feel about Sunny Day having become incredibly popular recently, and the young man responds that he was full of interviews. The radio host says that the building collapsed, and Eun-ha confirms, but she was not in danger, and the stuntman managed to dodge all the metal. That host says it seemed serious and questions where Yoo-chan was at that time. He says he was thrown away before the accident, and it wasn't in the film because he was thrown in a strange way. The radio host responds that the stuntman was incredible and calculated everything quickly, and Eun-ha confirms. Yoo-chan says he even jumped into a car and stopped with a metal plate. That woman on the radio says to wait a second because she saw the film, and there was no such scene. Both are astonished to hear about this. Eun-ha thinks her colleague was saying unnecessary things and says he was not only a good stuntman but a wonderful cook. The woman reads the chat from her live where someone comments that the car stopping clip was real. Both think they are in trouble, and the chat complains about this being reality. In his office, Taeho gets irritated upon hearing about this, shouting that Yoo-chan was an idiot. The leader of the Teacho marketing team complains about the actor, and the president says they need a strategy quickly. That leader comments that he revealed earlier than the scheduled 20 days. Taeho questions if there's another way, and the leader says they must change the timing, and if they miss the timing, it will be hard to control the situation. The president sighs a little and moves his cell phone, then puts it to his ear while listening to it ring. Kang answers, and after a conversation, he says they revealed earlier than expected and would report on the day of the incident. He thinks it might be luck, and Taeho responds that he was a hero, but it was the company that would handle the situation. They will make people see this video as something impressive and not serious. Instead of blaming Min-ji, they will focus on how cool he is. The protagonist tells him to go ahead and just not mention his name in the credits or any type of interview. After a short break, they return with part 2 and after the music. Yoo-chan complains about the team leader and apologizes to him several times. If there's something he can do, he should just say it, because he will give anything, and the leader tells him to reveal everything, because he was telling him to talk about the incident as clearly as possible. They planned to reveal this in 20 days, but now they have to do it now, and the CEO had agreed to do it. Eun-ha warns that they were starting, and Yoo-chan says yes, and they won't mention Kang. The radio host returns with the program and says the comments were exploding. Yoo-chan says he will talk about what happened since he didn't have the chance to explain earlier. A real event had occurred on the first day they started recording in the studio, and some kidnappers tried to take Min-ji. Eun-ha is surprised, thinking they decided to drop the bomb at this moment. Yoo-chan explains that the food truck guy managed to capture the kidnappers, and everyone watched the video. People on the internet comment that he wasn't human and had the skills of a special agent. Upon analysis, a man notes that he was faster than the Olympic record. On another site, they analyze that he might be the best baseball player in history. Jian mentions that the agent's information was spreading on the internet, and Kang says his name and face weren't revealed, so it was fine. Questioning if he could go to the Olympics, but the system says he can't pass a doping test. Baseball was facing the same issues, and the protagonist tells him to give up because he won't do it. Jian changes the subject, and says they should move to a more stable and better place. He could rest the combat mode more efficiently, and Kang asks if they can manage with their funds. The artificial intelligence says the payment for the recent movie had already been deposited into the account. 5 million won were deposited, and Kang questions if that was all. Ariam says she will share something and, from the moment she saw the video, she knew it was Kangin. She has a good eye for people, and Song-hwan says he didn't know there was another skilled person. The girl questions if he had seen another person like Appa Kangin. Song-hwan confirms because the person he met was incredibly skilled too. In his room, Kang complains that his ears were burning. Eun-ha enters the internet cafe, and they welcome her. She asks if this was the place where Na Kangin works, and Song-hwan confirms but notices who she was. Then he asks if it could be, and Eun-seo calls her friend, asking what brings her there and mentioning she was super busy recently, while Eun-ha says she came to talk to Kang and heard the food is good. The girl says he was in his room now, because he also lives in the internet cafe. She questions if he doesn't have a face, and Eun-seo says she doesn't know, but he eats and sleeps there. It might be a bit inappropriate for a man and a woman to live under the same roof, and Eun-ha says absolutely not. They start to argue because Kang isn't that type of person and wouldn't do anything to her. Anyway, she could go in because he was inside. Kang gets up upon hearing someone open his room door. The girl calls for her appa, and the protagonist questions why she was coming to him. She says she came to apologize for what Yoo-chan said on the radio. Kang says it wasn't her who spoke, and she mentions she appeared on the same show, and that guy really needs to learn to hold his tongue. He was being punished by Min Young at that moment with some tough times. Kang asks if she came all this way just to say that. She says she also heard the internet cafe is famous for its food and came to try it. The protagonist says they weren't serving food today because he has a place to go, and Eun-ha asks where he's going. He says he needs a place to stay, and as she can see, this wasn't ideal. Eun-ha questions why someone like him was living there, and the protagonist says he has his reasons. The girl imagines the protagonist, thinking he was a type of man with his stories. She says she will go with him, and it would be good to have someone to help him choose, and Kang responds that he can go alone. Both decide to go together and enter a house. The girl is amazed, and the protagonist says it has a refrigerator, an old air conditioner, and everything else. She asks if he isn't paid enough to live in a small apartment, and Kang confirms. Eun-ha says she doesn't understand why someone like him stays in an internet cafe, but now she doesn't even know why he goes to a studio. She questions how much he got and offers to help find the best place with the money he received, and Kang says it was 5 million. The girl is completely taken aback upon hearing the account balance. Then she takes out her phone and starts a call. The person on the other side answers and says it was Shin Eun-ha. Min Young questions what happened and shouldn't say that she was asking to forgive Kim Yoo-chan now, and the actor asks to be spared. The girl says no and will leave that decision to the sunbae. But that wasn't the reason he was calling. It seemed that Mr. Na Kang only received 5 million for his appearance fee. Min Young says it seems there are more people to deal with, and Eun-ha says Kang didn't say anything and was speaking in his place. She says he saved the movie and, more importantly, was her daughter's savior and will check with Tae-hoo, while Eun-ha thanks her, saying she will leave it with her for now. She says that until they respond, they will check out better places in the city. Lee Tae-hoo calls the protagonist, saying he was looking into it, and he only received 5 million for the appearance fee and was surprised to hear that too. Director Sun was very busy with the film's release, so the payment department just processed it as usual, and that's how it happened, but it was unacceptable with his work. So he calculated as the official stunt coordinator, and now he would transfer the total of 100 million won immediately, with Kang and Eun-ha entering a beautiful apartment. The girl comments that the previous deposit was very little, and the protagonist says she knows a lot of things. Eun-ha says she is the kind of woman who helps those around her, and the protagonist says it seemed good. Jian says she will ensure a clear line of sight of potential enemies, and if they install curtains, they can block observation. Eun-ha questions what he will do with the remaining 5 million, and Jian thinks they need secure mobility, so it would be good to buy a car. He decides he will buy a vehicle, and the girl says she knows a good place, but with 50 million, he should get something luxurious. The protagonist turns to Eun-ha, wanting to know why she keeps trying to help him, and if she happened to have feelings for him, putting the girl against the wall now. The girl blushes and asks why he was asking about that, and Kang says he was curious since she keeps trying to help him. Eun-ha says she was an actress, and just happened to have her schedule free and appeared there confidentially. She would have helped the same way because they are friends, and Kang says then it was a no. But his ears were turning red, and he was joking, besides thanking the girl for it. Eun-ha is shocked to hear about it. She says she won't help him if she hears something like that, and Jian thinks it was thanks to her, and not just Eun-ha. The girl recounts that on that day, if she had been hurt by the iron, she would have been injured or worse, but he saved her and survived. She wouldn't be alive if it weren't for that accident, and to be honest, she thinks it was all right. The girl really thought it was like that, but when she was alone at home, she started to realize things. Upon entering her dark house, her heart raced as she remembered the moment. Since that day, a house without light leaves her completely anxious, and the incident keeps appearing in her dreams. She thought it could be safer and would be all right if it were him, but she notices the protagonist wasn't listening, and Kang says the view was incredible. In a crowded dealership in the city of Seoul, Eun-ha questions if he really plans to buy that with his remaining money. He had good used tones in the cars there, but she wants to know why that old wreck, and Kang says it was rude to the seller. The seller says she was right and brought it there to sell, but no one wants to buy it even broken and cheap. Eun-ha says there are tons of better and prettier cars, and they should look, but the protagonist asks to look under the hood. The protagonist starts analyzing everything there, asking if he could fix a car like that, and Jian confirms because he has repair manuals for battlefield vehicles. The protagonist says this model was 80 years older than him, and the AI tells him not to worry. Once he fixes the electrical and fuel systems, everything will work correctly. Kang says he liked it, and Eun-ha says he could get a better car, and she would even lend him some money. The seller asks if he really wants to sell it, and the engine was terrible and won't take responsibility for it, and Kang understands but wants to sell. They decide to make a deal, and Eun-ha is completely shocked. In a public men's restroom, the protagonist asks Jian if it wouldn't be better to fix the car in the new apartment's parking lot. The artificial intelligence says this might raise suspicions with the neighbors, and Kang says it was a great place. He had already marked a good location to use as a base and recently had closed deals. He had gathered necessary information while accompanying him, and the protagonist asks if he noticed while they were on the bus, and it was a good job. Jian says they should just take the parts they need and repair there, in a place further away from Seoul. Eun-ha asks where this place was, because he was bringing a broken guy to this random place, and the protagonist says not to call his car that. The girl complains, asking if he signed up for a horror movie without telling and brought her there for that reason, but Kang denies it. That door opens, and they come face to face with a strange place. She questions what this is and if he was planning to fix the car there, and Kang agrees. Eun-ha asks if he knows how to fix the car and if he needs a mechanic's license, but Jian analyzes that his manual repair is superior to any license. The protagonist responds that Neotube teaches everything, and Eun-ha questions if he was joking. But what if it explodes, as he thought he would come back to life and be saved? But the protagonist says she was assuming they would go together. She wants to know what place this is, and Kang says it was a metal shop, and the place was closed because the owner retired. So he decided to rent it for a year, and the girl questions if he was serious about it. Kang opens the car hood, putting a red glove on his hand. The girl is surprised to see this. The protagonist asks why she wasn't leaving and if she plans to follow him for an entire day. She questions who was following whom, as he was the one who brought her there. Kang is confused, and she says this was infuriating. The girl decides she will leave, and he shouldn't stop her, as even if he gets bored, it wasn't a problem, and Kang says they were in the middle of nowhere. She responds that she will just call her manager, but the signal there didn't work since they were deep in the mountains. She questions if she was trapped there, and Kang says that at night, ghosts also come there. The girl trembles with fear. Kang says that honestly, he planned this for a long time, questioning why she thinks he brought her to that place. The girl trembles with fear, saying there's no way, then asks him not to do this because she's not ready, and Kang tells her to stop, and to stay quiet instead of screaming, because she will just help fix the car, and the girl says she doesn't want to get dirty. Jian warns that he will show how to fix it and first must remove in the indicated order. Eun-ha complains that he was just annoying while doing it himself, and Kang says her reaction was funny. The girl questions why he doesn't write the order where he will disconnect it, because there was a scene in a movie where someone disconnects the equipped precision, and Kang says not to worry because he remembers all the steps. She says the protagonist has an incredible memory, and Jian says it was his memory, while Kang tells him to stop responding to everything. Eun-ha also comments that his hands moved precisely and quickly as if he were a machine. Kang finishes, and she says there was less than an hour left. The protagonist tells his test doll to get in the driver's seat, and she says there was no way, and that was the real reason for bringing her there. He tells her to relax because he had fixed it perfectly after calculating everything, and Eun-ha questions if it won't explode on the way. But while driving, she notices it was simple, and there was no engine noise. He wasn't just good at cooking and martial arts, but his car repair skills were incredible too, and Kang says he is quite impressive. Eun-ha questions why rent this place for a year since he fixed the car quickly. If the apartment in Seoul they went to earlier was his living base, this place would be his production base, and he plans to make the mission equipment there too, and it was necessary. The protagonist responds that she doesn't need to know. She questions where they were going, and Kang says he will drop her home. Eun-ha says that in that case, she has a favor to ask, wanting to know how he installed the smart system to control from his phone and if he can put it in her house, and Kang asks her to ask her parents. The girl explains that they live very far away, and the protagonist responds to call others. She apologizes because she was scared. Lately, she keeps dreaming about the scenario collapsing and hasn't been able to sleep. Jian thinks it was a common symptom among soldiers in war zones, and they dreamed about their entire time in the army. He says that rescuing civilians was a basic mission of the army on Earth, so he will help the girl in any way. He enters Eun-ha's house and helps her, informing her that everything was ready and she should turn off the lights to test. Everything goes dark, and the girl starts fiddling with her phone, with everything working shortly after, and she is surprised. She thanks him for it, and the protagonist tells her not to mention it, because he was going to leave, and she tells him to wait, wanting to know if her friend was hungry, because she was going to cook a delicious meal for him, and would give her best. Honestly, she went to the internet cafe because she wanted to taste his food, but since she owed him, she wouldn't ask him to cook again. There is a restaurant she knows, and it was good, and the chef was Gyuchio. Jian says that understanding the local culture made integration easier, and high-end restaurants were beyond his budget, and it was a good chance to get information. The protagonist says that the artificial intelligence just wanted to eat, leaving Eun-ha puzzled. He responds that he hopes it will be better than his food and loves it too. The two go to a completely luxurious building. Eun-ha says this place is a bit famous and wants to know if he heard about it, but the protagonist denies it. She says it wasn't easy to get a reservation, and not just anyone went there, saying she was Shin Eun-ha and could easily get a reservation. The beautiful, famous, and perfect actress, but the protagonist just sighs, irritating the girl. She says she filmed many movies with the chef and got his number to make a room for two. Kang questions who she was planning to take there when she made the reservation. The girl remembers the previous night and says it wasn't something important. But anyway, they should enter their room for the meal. In a place called Cafe de Yumhan, the two sit in the chair. Kang comments about thinking it was a restaurant, but it was actually a cafe, and Eun-ha asks if he has never been on a date, because they will talk in the cafe until he gets hungry, and above them on the 7th floor was the restaurant. The protagonist thinks about the date. That fact where his identity exists in the government's database makes him wonder if he had a life like everyone else there. Wondering why he was in this place instead of the Earth Union in 2082, the girl says they should ask for a place by the window. The girl answers the phone, saying she will confirm the dinner on her reservation tonight. But she is surprised and screams upon hearing this, wanting to know what they meant by saying the reservation was cancelled, and it can't be right because she made it yesterday. Slamming the phone on the table, and Kang questions what was wrong. Eun-ha says someone more important than her came, and her reservation was withdrawn, but they cancelled it. The protagonist suggests they go eat gukbap or something like that, but she says there was no way, because he should stay there, and she will deal with it, so she will see how important this VIP was. People in the restaurant notice that it was Shin Eun-ha. The protagonist asks how the coffee there was, and Ji-in says it was good. On the first floor of the restaurant, there was a certain tension. The security guard wonders what the noise was, but notices some men and wonders who these guys were, because they were thieves with a pretty large group. One of them runs towards the security guard, striking his stomach with a knee. The security guard falls to the ground, and the thief says their target was Penelope on the 7th floor, and for now, they will ensure each floor is under control. On the 7th floor, Eun-ha asks how the chef could do this because he said there was a table yesterday. The chef apologizes and says a crucial reservation came suddenly, and the girl questions how important the guest could be. Oh Kyu-cheol says she was the last to make the reservation and had no choice because honestly, it was last minute and not official. Eun-ha says she had said before and came all this way, and Kyu-cheol apologizes and thought his staff had informed her. If she comes again tomorrow, he promises to treat her properly, and the girl is hesitant, saying she has no excuses to meet tomorrow, and if she asks him to come again, he will refuse, and Kyu-cheol questions who this person is. In another corner of the restaurant, someone is talking on the phone. Tae-hoo says that his brother insisted on coming there and barely managed to book the last night, but now he can't come, and Tae-sung gives his apologies. The young man questions if he will eat alone, and his wife was busy with her scheme. Tae-sung apologizes anyway and says they will talk later. The president says that eating alone is not his style and notices Eun-ha talking to Kyu-cheol. He approaches, and the girl greets President Lee Tae-ho. He questions if she was alone, and Eun-ha denies it because she came with Kang-in, but their reservation was cancelled. The president says that this works out very well, because he was worried about eating alone, but now he will join Kang-in and her. Tae-ho says that 3 are better than 2, and the girl gets angry. She questions if everything was okay, and Kyu-cheol says yes because it was the same as hers before everything. Kang drinks the coffee, saying it was totally amazing. Maybe he can chemically analyze how to make a different coffee, and his tongue wasn't that sensitive. The protagonist looks at Eun-ha's messages on his phone. Ji-in questions if the agent really prefers beef soup over gourmet food and was just being polite. Kang says he must be an insect, and this assistant was really annoying today, but he wants to know why Eun-ha was taking so long because it's been about 20 minutes. Ji-in says that an anomaly had been detected. All the phones in the area had lost their signal. Besides, the first floor's construction had its shutter closed. Analyzing the noise of the current state of the fire shutter, besides the entrance being completely closed. Reconstructing and interpreting the 4 distinct voices. People wonder why the shutter closed and didn't hear any siren. The protagonist decides he will go down and check, but the system detects an armed person found in the 2nd location. Some people were walking behind the internet cafe. He asks about the armament, and Ji-in says there were sounds of guns reloading, and he should retreat because they were approaching in 10 seconds. The protagonist says there's only one exit and wants to know where he should go, and Ji-in tells him to break the cafe window and jump. Kang questions if he is being told to jump to his painless fate, and the robot reminds him that he is on the 2nd floor. The bandits kick open the door. They point their guns forward, shooting at dozens of wine bottles. People wonder what that was because they were shooting the gun. With the closing of a curtain, the bandit orders them to be silent. Anyone who screams will be shot immediately, and they must shut up and move to the hallway. Tae-ho wonders what is happening and if this is a planned event. Judging by Chief Kyu-cheol's face, nothing was planned. Thinking this is real and creating a look of fear on his face, Eun-ha asks what she could do, and the president tells her to stay calm and do as they say. Everyone moves quietly forward. The girl says that Kang-in was on the second floor right now. And that's right, and if you call him, he will come to get you. But a bandit points a gun at her, asking if she doesn't understand the situation because phones are banned and don't work there. Wanting to know if she wants to report this, but the girl denies it, pretending she doesn't know the police number. The bandit orders them to go to the corner of the wall, and the pair moves quickly. Eun-ha says that Kang and Appa will come since he is strong. Tae-ho says that no matter how strong he is, everyone is equal before a gun, but they must get out of there immediately. Kang continues staring at the second floor window, wondering about breaking it and escaping, then repeats to himself that rescuing civilians is a fundamental mission of the Earth Alliance. Therefore, retreating is not an option. The bandits open the cafe door. They point their guns and tell them not to move and to keep their hands up. The civilians are completely confused upon seeing this, wondering if it could be an internet live stream because it seemed like someone was confessing today. The bandits get irritated upon hearing this noise. Then they shoot at a cafe window. People think it was a real gun, and he repeats to put their hands up if they don't want to lose their life. Kang whispers to Jian to confirm the enemy's equipment. It was a 9mm semi-automatic gun equipped with a high-performance suppressor. His ammunition was silenced, and the weapon itself had a sound reduction module. And Kang says that with this advanced equipment, there were no thieves. Jian says that currently, the agent had no equipment, his enemy was heavily armed, and due to the disparity, he should escape. It wasn't a tactical decision, and he wonders if there was another reason. Kang says that Eun-ha wasn't coming down from the 7th floor, and he assumes they took care of him before that. Eun-ha calls for Kang and Appa, wondering if he wasn't going to come and what would happen now. Tae-ho notices that the bandits were with a woman, saying that they don't care about civilians and that woman was the target. Eun-ha wonders who she was and if she was a minister from abroad or something like that, and Tae-ho says she was Scarlett Kelly, a CEO and head of Omega Tech. The actress says it was a company with shares in Apple and Google, but he denies it, thinking that Omega Tech develops military equipment. Her father, Lee Young-min, was the CEO of Iron Qigong, which built military equipment, but when her brother found out Kelly was there, he requested the reservation. Her company was well known in the film and performance industry, so he knew the chief Gyucheol. But now her brother wasn't here, and he was captured. And Eun-ha says that if this woman is the target, it must be a dispute between weapon manufacturers. The bandit orders the two to be quiet because if they make another sound, he will take their lives, pointing the gun again at Scarlett, and ordering her to say the access code if she wants to live. No matter how much she loved money, it meant nothing if she lost her life. Scarlett questions how much he was earning, because whatever amount he has, she will pay double, and no one has been hurt yet, so they could end it there. The bandit laughs hysterically, saying he refuses, and it wasn't about earning a few extra bucks. Scarlett also refuses because even if they make her suffer, she won't give the access code. The bandit twists her arm, saying he will see if it's true calmly, shooting in the middle of the civilians, which causes chaos. He says there are many of them, and he will take all their lives. Scarlett becomes apprehensive when she hears this. Jian says she detected two unusual instances coming from a floor above, and it was similar to the gunshot hitting glass, at least 3 floors higher than that. Kang thinks that if the enemy fired twice, the first shot seemed to be a warning and questions about the second, but Jian says it was glass breaking. The protagonist whispers that breaking glass seemed more dramatic and was perfect for intimidation, and they were probably threatening from behind the shutter. A child suddenly screams in fear. The bandit tells them to shut up and asks if the mother can make him quiet. She tries to calm her son, telling Jamin not to cry, and she screams for her mother. The bandit continues calling them bastards, then points the gun, saying he told them to shut up and will take the life of every noise they make, with Jian warning that the enemy will shoot civilians. The protagonist appears behind him and says the police are there. That bandit turns and questions when he moved. Kang takes a deep breath and moves his hand from side to side, apologizing because he didn't want to get so much attention while striking a strange pose. He says that children cry when they are scared, and shooting someone for crying wasn't a human act. The bandit tells him to shut up, and the subordinates inform their leader about this guy behind the glass. He asks if the protagonist thought he wouldn't shoot just because he was facing the glass. At this point, they won't even miss the shot, telling him to go to hell while pulling the trigger, but the protagonist appears behind him and lands a kick. With another blow aimed at the assassin's arm, Kang moves, hitting his arm and twisting it. The bandit groans in pain as his bone had been shattered. His weapon flies far away. The boss orders them to get that bastard, and Kang dodges from side to side. Jian says the glass panels were protective with bulletproof capacity and can't be penetrated with those bullets. The protagonist jumps once more onto the table, defending himself with it while the bandits complain that he was dodging everything. The table is suddenly thrown against them. Kang runs amidst the assassins, moving and managing to strike the blow on their heads. Everyone stands still, and the boss groans a little on the ground. He curses that bastard while holding the weapon. The protagonist notices this, but something hits him suddenly. Jian says he was showing the bullet's trajectory, and he must dodge. People are astonished, and the shot grazes the protagonist's arm. He performs a maneuver to leap towards the bandit. That boss wonders how a person can dodge every bullet. The protagonist lands a kick on the villain's head, driving him into the ground. He maintains his combat stance. People comment that the man won and thank him for saving them. To think he managed to defeat those armed men so easily. Jian warns that there were children approaching the agent. The boy asks if he is a superhero and defeated everyone at once. The artificial intelligence says the witness had a lot of blood, which wasn't good for the children's mental health. The protagonist notices the underwear he was wearing. Then he moves it with all his strength, leaving the children confused. But the guy places the underwear on the bandit's face, and the kids question what the man was doing. Kang says they don't need to worry, and his arm wasn't hurt, so they shouldn't be concerned. There were 3 semi-automatic weapons with 3.5 cartridges. Jian says he finally got the weapons and must disarm them all, and the protagonist wonders if he can do that with so many people watching. With this level of control, other groups might be waiting outside, and escaping could be dangerous, and the AI agrees as it would be difficult. Civilians, unlike the agent, have a high chance of perishing, and Kang comments that Unha was probably on the 7th floor, and they need to make a plan before moving. If they don't move quietly, people might be in danger, and he is somewhat wise. The protagonist looks at the masked men, removing the masks from their faces. Jian says they look like outsiders, and all 3 have the same ethnicity. They were outsiders who spoke their language fluently, and these guys were probably planning to get something and run. Jian says their firepower is insufficient, and should arm the civilians, and it was better not to fight. Kang responds that it wasn't 2082 anymore, and the AI asks to quickly see their cooperation. The protagonist questions if anyone has experience shooting guns and needs 2 volunteers. About 4 people agree to this. Jian says there might be enemies among the civilians and must choose carefully. Kang questions each one's role, and they say they were military. The protagonist decides to leave it to these 2. Both have children, and terrorists might plant spies among civilians but won't bring children. Kang warns he will check another area, and they should guard the cafe, so both agree to protect it with their lives. The protagonist says they shouldn't give the weapons to anyone and not let anyone except the police, as there might be snipers outside to prevent escape. Kang takes a radio from the man with the rabbit mask. Jian says he wasn't military and had signs of short-range modification, so a voice calls the man from the cafe, because he heard some noise upstairs and wants to know what was happening. Kang questions if the AI remembers the rabbit mask's voice, and it begins to modify the agent's voice. The protagonist says he disciplined those who didn't follow orders. People are astonished by this, and the person on the radio asks if he was acting recklessly again. Kang says they need to show these guys that they aren't just 3 people and will go up for a moment. He stands up and asks if a woman has a compact mirror, and she does. The protagonist thanks her with a wide smile, making all the girls blush. Kang goes up the stairs, commenting that they disabled the elevators. However, Jian says there was movement coming from the 1st floor. A bandit questions how he managed to handle the civilians he brought, and Jian activates combat mode due to the suspicious presence. That thief says the people are amateurs and will go up first to check. Kang reflects that there were people in the cafe and were probably talking, but these guys don't know if their allies are amateurs. This means they haven't been colleagues for long, and someone gathered them for an operation, and if someone important enough to cancel Unha's reservation was there. The boss was probably on the 7th floor in the restaurant, and Jian warns there will be contact with the enemy in 2 seconds. Kang goes up the stairs and looks at the bandit who was climbing, striking his face easily and leaving him knocked out on the floor. Kang places a mirror by the side of the door, noticing a guard was walking while humming something. If your hypothesis is correct, there was more than 1 person on the 1st floor, and it was a security guard. Kang easily strikes him in the face to knock him out. He groans as he falls to the ground, and Jian questions why he assumed they were enemies. The protagonist explains that they were using a modified radio just like the guys on the 1st floor and could figure it out on his own. Jian comments that if he had missed a punch, his opponent would have died, and he just adjusted the angle. The AI starts to lecture, and the protagonist tells it to stop there. Kang throws the security guard next to the other tied-up thugs. People wonder if he managed to take down 2 more, and the protagonist responds that it was nothing. He was a guard of this building, but it seemed they attacked him and he passed out, so they'll let him wake up. The military wonders if there was someone on the 1st floor and rushed to get out of there, but it doesn't work. Kang says they used firearms and must have planted mines at the restaurant entrance. Moreover, he tried to press the button in the security room, but there's no response, and they must have sabotaged it. That's how the person was leading control above the stairs, and he will handle it step by step, so they should wait there. Khan goes up the stairs again, and Jian warns that there were no sounds of people coming from the 3rd floor. All rooms besides the office seemed locked. Since it was the weekend, no one was coming to that area. There was no sound of breathing coming from the 4th floor either. There was a faint spark coming from above at the open door, and the protagonist should check. He opens it suddenly, and Jian says he found the control room. There were sparks from each generator's hard drive, completely destroyed with the computers broken as well. They made it impossible to recover footage, phone, or internet lines, blocking everything from the building. Khan says the 1st floor was the lobby, and the 2nd is the cafe, and the armed forces were above that, so the target is not Unha. She is a supporting actress, and the AI knew that. With the evening of that place, a man in a camouflage hood sits while drinking a bit. He looks to the side and notices the police car, wondering why they were there since communication was completely cut off, and wants to know how the report was made. Then he warns that they got visitors and should patrol a car. There were 2 officers inside, and on the 7th floor, they receive the message. The radio on the 2nd floor catches the protagonist's attention, questioning if someone in the cafeteria made the call for the police to go there. Khan whispers, thanking for the information because he will alter his voice to match his, responding that it was the 2nd floor, and before they took control, some people were on a call or typing, so they might have spoken before the cut. The thug stays silent for a few seconds and calls for the 1st floor. Khan notices it was a different radio and heard his voice earlier, responding that he was aware the police were coming there. The thug tells him to say the doors were locked because of the security system, and the protagonist responds incorrectly, but quickly corrects and confirms, and the thug gets irritated with that, but says that even if the police come, they can't enter, and there was no suspicious evidence since it will end soon. Now about the access code, they will continue, and Scarlet questions who he was. The thug responds that if it were easy to say, he wouldn't be wearing a mask. Everyone who saw his face lost their lives and questions if she wants to see. But her life had value, and if she wants to live, she must give the access code, and that woman would survive. Scarlet looks to the side, seeing her secretary Jessica being tied up. The redhead bites her lip and says the password was Prometheus, Ouroboros, and Pandora. Those were the 3 steps for the access code, and now that she spoke, they should let her go, and the thug says he will check first. His men outside weren't for decoration, and if the access code is false, her friends would lose their lives. Ordering to check the password of Prometheus, Ouroboros, and Pandora, Scarlet tries to reverse her mistake, saying it was a lie. Access is denied, and the thug pulls the trigger, hitting the secretary's head and leaving Scarlet with her face stained with blood. Her secretary was lying on the ground, and the woman calls her name in fear, screaming with her remaining strength, but the thug says she was foolish, because the time for games was over now. Outside, the police officer questions if it wasn't a prank, and they were sure of it. Someone from the cafe had apparently made a call, and it had been something massive there. But the police officers noticed something when looking at the sky. A set of signs indicated that the building was being occupied by terrorists. They should call the police, please. The officer decides they would go back. He wonders who the hell would play such a prank because he was very sleepy. His colleague looks to the side a bit apprehensive but decides to leave as well. The hooded man outside wonders if they just left, and it was a relief. They were idiots, and he informs that the police on the 1st floor have withdrawn, with the criminal telling him to continue monitoring because everything was according to plan. He comments that she seemed very downcast, showing that it was just wine that simulated the blood. He will give one more chance, and this time it would be real. Unha comments that she thought it was real, and Taeho says they threw the wine, but the woman seemed to faint from shock now. He releases Scarlet's face while the woman looks down apprehensively. The police car is still there, and the assistant asks why they were leaving since the 1st floor was completely blocked. That officer responds that this was the exact reason why they were leaving, and it wasn't something the two could handle, questioning who knows how many were inside that building. If they act without thinking, things will escalate faster, and that was the reason why he just left, to call for reinforcements elsewhere. Moments later, an entire team analyzes that they have a list of people using credit cards. It would be a problem if there were any celebrities, and the man says they have Scarlet Kelly from Omega Tech and Shin Eun-ha. One of the agents is surprised, asking if it was the actress. With the president of Ticho also being there, it seemed it was really Shin Eun-ha, and that was insane. Wanting to know if they all went to eat something made by Gichio. If a celebrity is taken hostage or loses their life, the media and the public will never stay quiet. Once they arrive, they will cross the street and check the situation from the terrace. Being there, a police officer informs the captain that they covered all the windows on the 7th floor, and a type of strange explosive was found at the main entrance of the 1st floor, and he orders not to approach the building. Inside the car, a subordinate questions what should be done, and the captain says the command will appear soon, and special forces will arrive. ordering them to grab their weapons and secure the perimeter without letting anyone escape from there. A criminal informs his boss that there were police officers back there, and detectives and special forces had arrived. His boss complains, ordering to proceed with Plan E, and it was the first time they had gone so far. Then he points the gun at Tae-ho, ordering him to come along. The president questions why suddenly, but the criminal warns that he will go down and deliver the message unless he wants his girlfriend to lose her life. Tae-ho says it was a mistake and she is not his girlfriend, but the criminal thinks he is trash. Eun-ha wonders what the hell was happening and trembles with fear, asking for the protagonist to come to save her. On another floor, the protagonist counts the bulletproof vests, and Jian says it was the 5th detection they neutralized. Kang says that above the 5th floor, they had planted bombs, and if it weren't for him, he would have lost his leg now. But coming from the floor above, a criminal orders him to do as instructed, because if he says something unnecessary or tries to run, his girlfriend would lose her life, and Tae-ho says Shin Eun-ha is not his girlfriend. The criminal orders him to go there and say exactly what they tell him, and that everything was fine. Jian detects the voice as that of President Lee Tae-ho. The criminals warn that there is a trap planted on the stairs, and Tae-ho should lead the way. That president descends with fear and completely apprehensive at every step he took, saying he really managed to do it until a female voice from a room asks if it wasn't Seo Lee. The man goes to the door, surprised afterward. One of the criminals wonders what that was and if it was a young lady, because someone came out from the lower floors, and it was a good voice. The girl questions what was happening because she was in the office, but when she woke up, everything was off, and she wants to know if something happened in the building. Lee Tae-ho thinks it was definitely Na Kang-in, but with a woman's voice. Moreover, her expressions and gestures were completely different from what he imagined. The criminal orders to look at the path the team will send, and escaping was impossible, especially being a woman. They will just knock out and go to the next floor. Jian warns that the enemy would arrive in a second. Kang moves at an incredible speed and swings his leg towards the bandit's face, landing a kick that sends him flying towards his allies, in addition to firing a shot. That bullet hits the bulletproof vest of his ally, and the bandits wonder what the hell this guy was. Kang takes the bandit hostage and points his new weapon, shooting at the arms and legs of the bandits. Then he moves once more and jumps to shoot, hitting non-vital points but making it impossible for them to move. Kang steps on their faces shortly after. Lee Tae-ho is astonished to see that scene with the men lying on the ground. The protagonist raises his face, and someone asks if Shin Eun-ha could be his girlfriend instead of Kang, but he denies it. Those bandits groan in pain on the ground. Kang questions about the others, but Jian says they were the only ones, and the short-range combat support was over. Lee Tae-ho says that Mr. Kang-in was really incredible, and the protagonist notices that the boss came from the 7th floor, wanting to know how the situation was there, as he needs information about it. After everything is told, he says the plan was changed because of the police, and they tried to ensure no one would escape using the boss. A radio from the 7th floor warns that Jackal was trying to communicate. He heard screams on the floor below, so he must report the situation, while Tae-ho thinks they will be captured. The protagonist perfectly mimics the voice, saying that 2 guys on the 5th floor were subdued and there were no casualties on their side. Jackal questions if he searched properly, and Kang says there was a hidden passage. With no time to proceed, he hangs up, and Tae-ho questions how his voice was exactly like the guy's and his voice sounded like the woman's earlier. Kang says mimicry was his personality, and tells him to wear the bulletproof vest, wanting to know if Eun-ha was okay, but the president says that so far yes, but they were keeping an eye on her. Jian assumes that celebrities have high values as hostages. Then she warns she will go ahead, while Tae-ho says he has a gun too, so he will fight by her side, because he had served in the army and is a reservist who was a sergeant. Kang questions his position, and the president is a little hesitant, saying he was in the promotional unit of the defense minister, and Kang tells him to stay there, besides keeping an eye on the guys who were unconscious, and Tae-ho questions what if they wake up. The protagonist tells him to shoot them in the head because it will take them down easily, but the man responds he will focus only on the body. On the upper floor, Jackal orders to give the code quickly. Scarlet responds that even if they take her life, she would never tell, making the man even angrier. He points the gun, saying she should just lose her life until some subordinates are thrown back. The men turn around, and Scarlet is astonished by the protagonist punching and sending 2 men flying. People wonder what this is and if it was the police. Eun-ha just calls for Kang Na-in, but a bandit covers her mouth. Others continue shooting at him while they walk, but the protagonist dodges all the shots with his perfect acrobatics, then uses his strength to propel off the wall, advancing with his hands ready to neutralize the weapons. The protagonist grabs the arm of one of the bandits, spinning him several times and slamming him into the ground with a knee strike shortly after. Kang draws his weapon while talking to Ji-in, pointing at the bandits while the civilians on the 7th floor wonder if it was the police or a hero. The system warns that Shin Eun-ha had disappeared, then questions where the others were, and a civilian says the masked man took the actress and Scarlett downstairs. Kang tells everyone to go down the stairs because on the 5th floor they will find President Lee Tae-ho, so they should join the civilians on the 2nd floor. In another room, the bandits say that guy didn't seem like a cop, and he responds that his goal was to escape with the target, but wants to know why take this woman, as she talked so loudly it drove him crazy, and Eun-ha screams for Kang and to save her. The bandit says if the police blackmail them, they should just throw her, and she is perfect to be threatened until they extract the Omega Tech codes. Eun-ha tells those bastards to stop speaking in their beastly language. Suddenly Na Kang-in enters the room, breaking the door with a kick. He walks calmly towards the bandits. 2 of them run towards him, calling him a bastard. But Ji-in anticipates the trajectory of the knives and marks for the protagonist to dodge. Kang advances with his eyes shining, jumping while using the wall for momentum. Then he shoots at the backs of the bandits. The one holding Eun-ha in his arms says he was a stupid fool and tries to shoot upwards. But Kang performs other acrobatics to dodge with extreme ease, telling Eun-ha to duck while he points the gun. The woman obeys his commands, and Kang lands 3 shots on the bandit, who releases the actress. He falls backward, leaving the crime scene calmer, with only a wound on his shoulder that makes the bandit groan in pain. Jackal orders the bastard to stop, and Scarlett asks to be freed. The man looks at the woman and points the gun at her arm. Blood flies around the room, and Eun-ha screams in panic. The woman's arm is damaged, and Jackal points the gun at her head, warning that she was the next target, and if he doesn't drop the gun, they will take her life immediately. Kang throws his pistol to the other side of the room without hesitation. Scarlett is astonished to see this and stares at the protagonist, breathing heavily. Outside, the police successfully disarm the mine. The armed forces begin to enter the location. Everyone was apprehensive, but they decide not to shoot the people coming out as they seem to be civilians. The women recount that the terrorists with guns entered the cafe and tried to shoot. Everyone thought they would lose their lives, but someone even more terrifying than them had appeared on the scene. He dodged the bullets in the blink of an eye and took everyone down. The atmosphere was tense, and not counting him, everyone must have lost their lives. The captain says he was talking about a ghost or a ninja who dodged all the bullets and took down the terrorists without getting hurt. Wanting to know what kind of nonsense this was, while his subordinate says everyone must be having hallucinations caused by panic. Maybe they were hallucinogenic weapons, so he must ensure his team wears gas masks. Inside the building, Eun-ha asks if her appa is insane for throwing the gun, but the protagonist says he will let him shoot. Jackal questions how he got there and received a report about no problems on the lower floors. Kang drops all the radios that were under his shirt, imitating the subordinate's voice while saying it was him, and his boss was falling for it, because it was he who made all the voices, and Jackal gets irritated upon understanding the same information he repeated, but curses the situation, only shooting at the protagonist. Kang grabs a kitchen knife that was on the table, advancing while dodging the shots at unimaginable speed and throws it at Jackal's arm. Scarlett falls into Eun-ha's arms. Kang tells them to use him as a shield and leave calmly, because he will end this, and Jackal calls him a bastard, wanting to know where he came from and what his codename was. The protagonist lowers his head, saying he will say it only once and must listen with full attention, then advances, landing a punch on his opponent's stomach repeatedly, then strikes his chin, knocking out some teeth, landing a kick to the head and others to the stomach. Thus, Jackal is thrown far and collides with the piano. Kang remains standing and says his codename was K-Batcha. Jackal wonders what that meant. Ji-in reminds the protagonist that the hostage has a wound on her arm and needs first aid. Gyu-cheol enters the room suddenly, asking if Scarlett was okay. Kang says it was a good time, and Eun-ha asks if he was watching from a safe distance. But the protagonist opens the first aid kit and starts selecting the equipment. Scarlett was impressed, and Ji-in says the wound wasn't deep and it seemed the bullet only grazed her. The bone and veins were intact, and it wasn't life-threatening, saying the wound wasn't deep, but she should go to the hospital now. Scarlett thanks the special agent for saving her life, and Eun-ha questions if she speaks Korean, because they were in all this trouble because of her, and Scarlett says her grandmother is Korean. Eun-ha says she speaks Korean clearly but was using English, and she explains he was probably a US agent to protect her, but the protagonist responds that he is just a local food vendor. The Special Forces agents climb the stairs quickly and cautiously, ordering to stay alert because you never know what might happen. Tae-ho notices that people were climbing. Then he says it was the police, and the agents ask who he was. The president cries with happiness because they were there, but the agents order him to drop the weapons immediately. Tae-ho approaches, saying he seriously thought he would lose his life waiting for them. After a few minutes, they confirm the identity of President Lee Tae-ho, questioning if it was he who took them down, but the president denies it since the person came and hit everyone with ease. The guards quickly duck when they notice there are landmine bombs in the corner of the room. Lee Tae-ho picks it up with his hand, asking if it was that. Since they had already been disarmed, the agents tell this idiot to close that bomb before it explodes. The bald man welcomes them to his restaurant upstairs. Those agents wonder if it was a flash grenade but soon identify Chief Gyuchul. He tells them not to worry because everyone was safe there. There was only one injured person, but she received first aid and was fine now. The police wonder if this person dealt with the terrorists, and Eun-ha says they were all unconscious. Each of those who were inside the building. The agents are apprehensive seeing this, wondering why they came all this way. Outside, the police deduce that the terrorists were disguised among the civilians and must check each person. Then they thank Mr. Kang because they avoided a disaster. They also quickly identified the leader and hand some coffee to the protagonist. The leader was Jackal, an international criminal involved in terrorism, thefts, and kidnapping. He was on Interpol's radar and wonders how he could defeat this guy with a single blow. Kang says they seemed like mercenaries, and the police officer is surprised he even noticed that. Jackal had only 3 real subordinates, and the rest were specifically hired knowing fluent Korean. In this case, someone lured the American woman into the building, and it was one of his employees who recommended the place. The United States investigation agencies will handle this, and Kang looks out the window thoughtfully. The police officer wants to know how he fought alone, and it was admirable. But it wasn't something they could easily do, even being police against armed terrorists. Moreover, he noticed that none of them had their lives threatened by the wounds, and even the gunshot wounds were not in critical areas. Asking how he acquired such skills, because he heard he wasn't from the special forces, and Jian says the officer doubts the protagonist's identity. There was a list of excuses for the infiltration and operation manual. Kang says that about 2 years ago, he left the army. Then he trained in the mountains during that time, staying under the waterfall for 7 days. He traveled in the Taibik mountains for training, digging ginsengs when hungry. The protagonist created his own martial art that incorporates weapons and practiced with water pistols. The martial art is called the gun fist style. Practicing with water weapons works well, and this could be the power of talent. And the police officer thinks it was impressive but seemed like nonsense. In an emergency room of a Korean hospital, the doctors are impressed to see Scarlet. Because of that scar, the pattern and shape was something he remembered. It was that person he had mentioned before. Then he questions who stitched the wound, and Scarlet asks why he asks. The doctor responds that he was curious, but the woman replies she can't say that. Jessica interrupts, saying they were attacked by terrorists, and can't release unnecessary information. In Chief Lee Young-ho's clinic room, people rush in saying they had good news. The surgeon questions what he needed. That doctor says he found the man who made the scar like a sewing machine. Young-ho tries to find out the name, but the doctor responds he didn't know yet. When he was in the operating room, the gunshot victim came in, and the style is identical. But they had left after basic treatment. He feels sorry and said they needed to leave urgently. Young-ho responds that it didn't matter who did it. The doctor says the police didn't know either. In the police office, a subordinate hands a paper to Ki-young because the investigation team should have someone to review it. Even if he doesn't see the contents, only Ki-young could, and the detective complains they were making him work again. His boss responds it was because he trusted him, and if he were a little less stubborn, he would be a great guy. Ki-young opens the document, and is shocked. The boss questions about it because it would be allowed to find out if he knew directly from his mouth. Ki-young asks if he knows about the movie Sunny Day, and his boss asks if it was that movie with Shin Eun-ha. The detective says that the hero involved in the incident was the film's stunt director, but the real shock is that they know this person. The boss has a serious face, wanting to know if he is a criminal. Ki-young questions if he remembered the acrobat artist. The boss says yes, and he captured the killer with a drawing and helped in his performance improvements. Noting that they were the same person and there was no way he could have so many professions and be good at everything. In a government investigation room, people wonder if this makes sense with the boss being the center of the case. To be precise, their investigation is about Jackal, and a boss questions how they could ignore Na Kang-in, who resolved the incident alone. He saw him carrying someone through a burning building and it seemed like he was good at everything he does, so he assumed he was part of a special forces unit. Checking his classified units, he had received an honorable discharge as a sergeant from an administrative unit. He even got a photo of his former commanding officer who confirmed it. So he was someone who could take down an entire army by himself. Repeating Kang Na-in's ridiculous story about training in the mountains eating ginseng, besides having spent 7 days under a waterfall. Then with these bomb-defusing skills he would have learned on YouTube. 2 days later at the internet cafe, Eun-seo welcomes a new client, and says she can't go to that area. But Eun-ha takes off her glasses for her friend to recognize her. Jian warns that she heard Shin Eun-ha's voice. She appears behind the protagonist, and he questions why she went there. The girl hands him a bag. asking if he remembers the last time when they couldn't eat, so she brought things to have a meal since he cooks well. Kang tells her to leave and Eun-ha complains, but the protagonist questions why buy ingredients and come there instead of going home. She should be honest, and he will cook. Eun-ha blushes for a few seconds, getting redder each time she thought, then says she doesn't know, and when she's near him, she feels at peace and doesn't have nightmares anymore. Questioning if the protagonist was even listening, Kam says she picked up some new things and will make a seafood meal. Eun-ha thinks she hates him, but at the same time likes him. After a few minutes, the meal is ready on the kitchen table. Eun-seo says it was amazing and the taste seemed incredible, and Eun-ha is impressed. The blonde puts the food in her mouth, shouting that it was very delicious, and Eun-ha cries because it was so good. Kam thinks they were eating well until someone appears behind them and asks if they can eat that too. It was Scarlett Kelly with a band on her arm. Eun-ha says it was the American woman from last time, and Scarlett says she found the right place. Kam questions how she got there, and the woman says she has some friends in Korea. She just looked up the name and workplace, and Kam asks for forgiveness. Jian is sure they also looked into the protagonist's past. Kam questions what she wants, and Scarlett offers for him to become her bodyguard. His artificial intelligence warns that becoming a bodyguard will restrict him from other activities, so he sighs, giving relief to the real guards. She questions if she pays with all benefits, but the protagonist says he already has things to do. Scarlett accepts but says she will just buy some food since she was hungry too. As the day passes at the internet cafe, the American woman says it was incredible. It was better than anything she tasted even in the best restaurants, and Eun-ha complains that this food should be hers. Scarlett thanks for the food and says she needs to leave now since she will travel, handing an Omega Tech card to the protagonist. She says if he doesn't want to be her bodyguard, he could be the part-time boss at her yacht party. Jian says financial problems may arise in the future, so it wouldn't hurt to get the number, warning that he will know, and Scarlett says she will send a message, while Eun-ha complains once again, because the woman only noticed now even after eating together, and the American apologizes because her focus is excellent. Eun-ha tells her to remember to because she is part of the team along with him, being the most beautiful actress of Sunny Day. Scarlett thinks it was a considerable title, and says she will remember. Outside, she gets into an armored car, saying that everything went as expected, and Jessica says then it wasn't that good, but she seemed happy and wants to know if something good happened. Scarlett says she got some new information, and her secretary questions if she found the special forces where he graduated. The American simply responds that he cooks very well, and she was genuinely shocked by this, breaking into a smile, because she wanted to see him very soon. At a Korean airport, Tae-sung notices someone approaching, saying it should be Miss Scarlett, while the American recognizes him. Tae-sung introduces himself as the leader of Iron Qigong, and heard she had some tough times. It was a relief that things didn't get worse, and Jessica gets annoyed, questioning what he was talking about. Her boss just twisted her arm, and Tae-sung says he heard about a terrorist attack. Scarlett says her boss has classified information and must have done some research, while the director thinks he got excited and spoke. Then he corrects his misunderstanding, but it wasn't the case, as his younger brother was also caught in the incident while eating there. He was guarding the stairs between the 5th and 6th floors. Scarlett recognizes Lee Tae-ho. Tae-sung thinks he was planning to use his connection to talk about business later, but pushing too hard would be bad, so he says his brother is the CEO of Ticho. There's a famous TV restaurant chef who knows his brother, and Scarlett seems uninterested. Tae-sung thinks the atmosphere was cold, and says he invested a lot in a movie, questioning if she heard about the movie Sunny Day, remembering what Eun-ha had said about being the best actress in the movie. Jessica says it's time to fly and feels sorry but will end the small talk here, and Tae-sung accepts, handing over his card. Scarlett tells Jessica to give her card because she has to work hard now. Tae-sung responds that it's no problem and will call her later. The next day in another building, the doctors analyze that from the photos, the technique used was the same. It was clearly done by the same doctor, and everything was identical, including the space. The precision and speed of the sutures left no doubt it was the same person. Young-ho responds that they don't know the doctor's name, and the police refuse to give information. His subordinate responds that they need this doctor to perform Young-ji's surgery, and Young-ho says he will strive every second to find out, sighing while clutching the paper and trying to figure out what this doctor might be doing now. At the protagonist's workshop, Eun-ha questions what he was doing, and the protagonist responds that he was fixing a machine because it was broken. It was a metal cutting machine, and he needs to fix it before repairing any other equipment. Eun-ha says that now he even works with metal, while the machine starts to spin. She questions if he was okay, and Kam says he's really good at fixing things like this, telling her to watch because he's the cutting warrior but gets no response. Jian says the equipment was completely broken. Kam complains that she could fix it, and the artificial intelligence says the condition was worse than expected. He needs to buy additional materials, and Eun-ha questions what he was whispering, because it wasn't her fault it broke, and Kang says he was complaining about this crazy part of his that broke the machine. Eun-ha says she understands and has a part like that too, and Kang says they're going out to buy. She questions when he does this, and will just go shopping when he's annoyed. They go to a home goods store, and Eun-ha complains mentally. Kang says it was an equipment store, and Kang responds that it was his store. She suddenly receives a call on her cell phone. She answers, and the person on the other end asks where she is now. Park Woo-seop, her agent, tells her not to drink alcohol and take care of herself because they got an offer. She gets serious for a few seconds but soon celebrates, saying she will really do it, and Woo-seop says it was a commercial with Yu-chan. Eun-ha says it's amazing and should sign the contract, but Woo-seop says he doesn't have Kang's number. The commercial needs to add quick movements and wants action choreography done by the director of Sunny Day. They would be inspired by the action in his movie and asked to give his number. Eun-ha says he's next to her and will pass the phone, and her agent questions why they were together. The girl complains that there was nothing strange happening, and Kang approaches, wanting to know who it was. Woo-seop says if a scandal breaks out at a critical time, it would be bad, but Kang says they were just buying tools. The agent feels relieved to know it was a store and not a meeting, while Kang complains that Eun-ha just followed him there. Seop apologizes for the late introduction but wants to talk to him about a commercial. Kang just accepts things, and Jian calls the agent, informing that to upgrade their forge base equipment, they need a lot of money. They were in the middle of an infiltration mission, and Jian responds that as long as he doesn't show his face, it's all good. Kang repeats the information to the agent, and Woo-seop tells him not to worry because he will only handle the fight choreography. But he hesitates for a few seconds, saying that the clothes were a bit unique, and his face won't be shown, but he would wear a green background suit. At the Sa Entertainment Cafe, Eun-ha calls for Woo-seop. He says it was nice to meet Na-kangin. Woo-seop responds that if he had come so early, he couldn't eat and will make sure to treat him well next time, introducing himself again as Eun-ha's manager and director of Sa Entertainment, then asks him to take care of the project, and his face won't appear. Eun-ha complains that she was hungry and will eat first. Woo-seop says his company had good quality food and should feel free to come anytime, and it will always be free for Kang. Then tells them both to enjoy the meal and call when ready, saying that there's no other way, but inside he was celebrating eating with him. Song-hwan notices the protagonist from behind, questioning why he was there, and Eun-ha mentally thinks he was always interrupting. They eat together, and Song-hwan says that the goddess Eun-ha was working with Sa Entertainment. As he was a big fan, it was an honor to eat with him, while the woman thinks he used the third person to interrupt when they were alone. Kang questions what he was doing there, and Song-hwan says he came to check the server's security system. Recently the agency was hacked, and Sa Entertainment saved him. Eun-ha says they should hire a professional but called a part-time worker from an internet cafe. Kang says Song-hwan is an ethical hacker and was really skilled. Eun-ha questions why someone so skilled was at the cafe, and this place was suspicious because Kang worked there and now a super skilled hacker. Song-hwan tells him to wait a second because he never said he was a hacker, wanting to know how he knew that, and Jian says that after rescuing him, they should meet for the first time at the internet cafe. Kang responds that he has good instincts and should try the food because it's really delicious. Suddenly some girls call Sunbae Shin Eun-ha, speaking in a coordinated manner while introducing themselves as Pepe girls. Song-hwan is impressed by this, and the girls thank Sunbae for wishing a good meal. The nerd says it was amazing because they were casually talking with the Pepe girls, and Eun-ha says his reaction is different from a fan. Song-hwan continues talking about all his nerdy things, and the protagonist thinks they look like Arium. Kang questions if the nerd finished his work here, and he confirms because he came early, and luckily no one was hacked. The protagonist understands, and Song-hwan tries to figure out why he was there. He responds that he's going to film a commercial, and Eun-ha interrupts, saying she was the actress and only needs Appa for action scenes. Song-hwan suggests being his temporary agent, but Kang responds that he doesn't need it and can just watch. That nerd thanks him, and Eun-ha gets irritated because her meeting was ruined. In the commercial production room, people are impressed to hear about the martial arts director from Sunny Day. It was nice to meet him, and the person introduces himself as the commercial producer. Their previous director got injured, and the production was almost cancelled, but he was grateful he showed up at the last minute. Woo-seop says the filming will be tomorrow, but time is short, and they should start immediately. Kang asks if his artificial intelligence is okay with this, and Jian confirms because it was a good strategy. The protagonist warns that there's time, and Eun-ha freaks out, telling him to stop now, while Woo-seop says it was a good opportunity. He will handle the contract while Kang films, and will keep an eye on everything to make sure they don't mess with the guy while Jian adds him to the list of good people. Anyway, they start changing clothes. Kang wears that green suit, saying it was more ridiculous than expected and wants to know if people wear this in 2082, but the robot denies it because technology was advanced. Yu-chan looks at the protagonist and says hello to him, but he is impressed and starts laughing when he sees his outfit. The actor says it was amazing to see him in those clothes and it was very funny. Eun-ha asks if her appa was an idiot for coming there wearing just those few clothes. At least he should put on a green short on top, and Kang asks what she was staring at. Yu-chan laughs, saying he should look at things because they don't match the pants. Kang responds that the filming days will be difficult, and his friend questions if the clothes are comfortable. The protagonist says no to him because they are the ones who will suffer now, and they both apologize. But Kang tries to figure out what was with those clothes because they didn't seem like outfits for quick action scenes. The two take off the cloak that covered them. Yu-chan says they were wearing strange clothes too, with Kang thinking it was the pot calling the kettle black. Woo Seob finishes signing the contract, and he just needs to sign there, until he notices that the internet was cut off and it was working fine for a moment, and Song Hwan says he will help. The agent says he installed a security program on the notebook earlier and should take a look, while Song complains it was bad because they took down the internet. Woo Seob asks if he installed something strange on his notebook, but the nerd denies it, because the program detected a hacking attempt and cut the internet to prevent it. All the other people there say their internet also went down, and it was all the computers. Someone from afar continues on their keyboard with a smile on their face. In his office, the president asks what he was saying with all the company's computers being hacked. Song Hwan says the manager's notebook lost the internet, so he checked, and everyone was in the same situation, being targets of hacker attacks. The president asks if he's sure it was a hack, and the nerd confirms. That boss questions what kind of mix was something like that, and he's a hacker, so he should answer. Song Hwan responds that he specialized in defense and not tracking, but the CEO tells him to do anything because he'll give 10 million won. Khan hears about the amount and gets a serious face. Song Hwan says tracking wasn't something anyone can do, and for that, they need to start cooperation to hire a professional company. The protagonist recognizes the robot's voice and says he must be trying to make money while Jian says he will demonstrate his immense capability. Khan walks, telling them to leave it to him. Song Hwan questions if it was a joke, and if he says something like that in a serious situation, people will believe it. The president questions if the martial arts director could find where the hacker is. Kang responds that 10 million won is more than enough, so they go to the notebook. Kang inserts a flash drive, thinking it was a good thing he carried the program used last time. Then he starts typing and working on the computer. Jian analyzes the traces that won't last long, and Kang thinks it was easy money for 240 seconds. Song Hwan is confused while the protagonist types, asking how the result was already showing because he was breaking it so easily, wanting to know how he did it. But Kang thinks he doesn't know either. The enemy's location had been identified and shows it to them. The president asks if he's sure and tells them to call the police to proceed with the investigation, wanting to know how he found a hacker in just 4 minutes, and Kang questions if it was very expensive, because it was something that could decide the company's future, and if they want to be hacked again, they should stay without paying. Elsewhere, the police ask for permission, knocking on the door repeatedly, and it opens quickly. The man questions what it was, and Ki-young responds that he was a police officer and a hacking report was found, asking for permission while the man is surprised. He tries to say he didn't want to do anything bad and was just curious to extract the phone number. Ki-young questions what he was planning to do with that phone number, where he could steal photos and sell them on the internet, but the man responds he just wanted to see if he could hack a phone, and it was a joke. Ki-young warns that he is being arrested and has the right to remain silent, but wants to know how the company knew where the hacker was, as they were just a production team, and the boss says they tried to hire a specialist. He was probably insanely skilled. The producer calls his boss and shouts that they managed to capture the hacker. Some crazy person had hacked just to get information about a celebrity, and Woo Seop says Kang-in was incredible with jokes and hacking, wanting to know if there's something he can't do, but the protagonist responds that he doesn't know how to fail. Eun-ha questions what he did that was so impressive, but Song Hwan says it's insane. The woman thinks he could be her perfect future husband. The producer warns that since the martial arts director bought time, it won't take much longer. He really would like to finish filming today and wonders if it was possible. Jian thinks she can't wear that ridiculous outfit tomorrow, and Kang responds that no matter what, they would finish today, because they were going in Sparta mode, and the team says it was incredible. A soda is opened, and its fizz spreads throughout the place. Yu-chan walks the streets shirtless with a cold face, giving a smile. Eun-ha follows him in the same way, saying hello to player 1. Thus begins the filming as if it were a fighting game. Yu-chan advances with a punch towards her, but Eun-ha blocks and hits his abdomen with her fist. Player 1 prepares his strike with all his strength, hitting Eun-ha's arms while she was blocking the attack. The girl takes a deep breath and launches a fireball at Yu-chan. He trembles in fear with the fire on his leg. The girl opens a malicious smile on her face. Then she prepares to attack, landing several blows on Yu-chan and giving him some repeated kicks. Player 1 is defeated on the ground, suffering. Eun-ha rests and places the soda by her side, opening and drinking it right after. She is happy, saying it was very refreshing, while advising that if he wants to feel refreshed inside, he should drink some of the soda called Potion Pang. The two compete for the commercial's drink. People comment that it was insane. The producer says that as someone who filmed 50 commercials, he knew Kang-in was a deity. He clearly saw how the CGI effects would be applied and even felt the end of the fight. Filming 2 victory scenes for Shin Eun-ha and 2 for Kim Yu-chan in just a few hours was an incredible achievement. Kang questions how it turned out so well, and the producer says they'll watch the footage together, showing it on the computer because even when Shin Eun-ha delivered a kick, or when Kim Yu-chan launched a stunning attack and made the girl fly in the air, when the actor goes flying, everything had Kang Na-in's touch present. Yu-chan drinks the soda and breathes refreshingly, questioning if his life had returned again, because when they are completely exhausted, they should drink the Potion Pang. The production people say the commercial is over, and working on time was incredible. Yu-chan and Eun-ha thank them for the hard work, and the producer says they both worked hard. They must have fought a lot while enjoying the drinks. Eun-ha questions how her appa wasn't tired now, and Kang says he doesn't get like that. Yu-chan complains that he was totally foolish and thought this commercial would be as quick as filming a movie. His muscles felt like they were going to tear, and Eun-ha questions if the manager can clear her schedule for tomorrow, but he denies it. Song-hwan says Kang-in really worked hard and thanks him because he saw something incredible. Suddenly, a spark appears behind them. Kang feels it, and Jian calls for the agent, seeing a great risk of electrocution detected with sound engineering quacusion. A civilian was about to get hurt, so the agent must immediately turn off the power to his equipment. Kang throws the utility knife towards the location. Yujin touches the table and feels the electricity entering his body. The protagonist manages to turn off the power. People wonder what was wrong because the woman collapsed suddenly. Kang runs while Jian says he should check the injured person. He approaches the girl's body, analyzing her pulse and her ocular retina. Jian says he was electrocuted but wasn't exposed to the point of being fatal, and her physical responses were normal. The producer questions if she was okay, and Kang responds that she was alive and the shock wasn't fatal. That man falls to the ground, saying he was so scared he thought he was going to lose his life, and Kang orders to send her to the hospital. The producer says it was clear, and someone should call an ambulance immediately. Sometime later, he says it was at the last minute, and if something bad happens to Yuzian, they would be finished. Questioning if he knows how she got into this state, because if he hadn't noticed, it would have been a disaster, and Kang says he felt it. And with a utility knife, he managed to cut the power, and the producer questions how he managed to cut something just by throwing. Yu-chan says that his teacher has incredible instincts, and during filming managed to dodge everything. Eun-ha wonders if he is human, and Hwan comments that she was in love. An employee runs towards them saying there is a problem. Kwak Yujin's equipment wasn't working and obviously the cables were cut. But it wasn't just that equipment, even the computer they were working on was fried. Thanks to this, it was only the sound computer, and they need to play the music to finish syncing the video, while the producer sends someone to get the file. The employee says the original file was on the computer but now it won't turn on. There was no recovery and the deadline was tight. They need to be first but there was no way. The producer questions if there is no separate backup and the employee says it was downloaded directly from her email and would have asked for a copy if he had known. He asks if they can request another copy from the composer. The employee says the composer is Yujin's older brother, and if he finds out about the accident, he won't let it go. If they contact the composer, the client will find out about the accident. The producer thinks his client was superstitious and generally believes in luck, so if they hear about an accident, they'll move to another company. They can't let all the hard work go to waste, but a whole melody counts. The two raise their heads to try to find the source. Khan sings that if they want to become refreshed, just drink a little of the Pang potion while playing the guitar. The producer and the employee are astonished and after a few seconds, the protagonist plays again. People ask if the producer is really going to change the original music to the martial arts director's version. He questions who said they would use the clean version, as they just need to sync with the video first and make a remix to sound like the original. Kang-in's voice was incredible and will sell much better, while Eun-ha asks how good he can be to react like this. Then they ask if Mr. Na Kang-in can play the music from the beginning with his guitar. He whispers to Jian to play perfectly from start to finish and activates the performance. He also says he will sing so they should adjust their vocal cords. It seemed like there was a karaoke screen in front of him, and it was a way to boost allies' morale. Thus the music begins and the protagonist prepares his performance, playing the guitar while singing that if he wants to refresh, he should drink Pang potion. If he's out of stamina, he should drink the best drink of all. When finishing a move, just drink a pang. It was sweet and just drink the strawberry or grape one. There were 51 different flavors including the zero flavor. People celebrate saying it was Mr. Kong. They wonder if the martial arts director is really a singer, and the synchronization is perfect. Jian comments that it was a perfect 10 with impeccable skills. The employee says his hope was so precise that he can hear and was totally relaxed in his legs. That producer cries with so much happiness, saying they need to use Kong In's version in the commercial, while the employee questions about the original music. The producer responds that if the version was good, it would be better with the studio recording and they will use both, thus adding variety and it will be amazing, while the contractors will love it. A week later, the video appears on YouTube. Ariam says the singer's voice sounded like Kong In's and Song Hwan questions why she thinks that, since it was Kong singing and she heard him live, while Ariam says it was reality, and they should take her next time. Eun Seo says Kong In was really very talented. Even her sister Eun Ha was showing her old version again, and the actress calls for her, giving the blonde a scare immediately. Eun Seo says she was about to share her stories, but Ha says if she wants to stay safe she should wisely say the words, but wants to know where Kong In was, and the blonde says he went to a lunch today. Eun Ha thinks she was planning to take him to lunch and celebrate his launch as a singer, wanting to know where he might have gone. Inside a very fancy place, Yujin really thanks the protagonist, because she appreciates him for saving her, and she was so grateful that he allowed them to have lunch together. Kang says anyone would do the same and Yuzyang responds that he was very kind but only he saved her. The protagonist wants to know what place this is because it seemed very expensive for a sound engineer's salary, and the girl says it was the least. But her older brother will pay today, showing a limitless card. Jian says he hasn't had many chances for high-class meals, so he should eat something tasty, while Kang says he was grateful for it. Yu-chan approaches, talking to his friend, because he was eating there too, and a waiter recognizes him. He welcomes Yu-chan, and the actor says he was looking for Chef John Dong-seon's food today. Yu-chan says the girl was that sound engineer who was carried last time, and he has a good memory. Apparently, she was trying to thank him for being saved, and Chef Dong-seon's food was incredible, wanting to know if he was there to gather information about the food and get better at cooking. The chef takes his hand off the plate and looks with disdain, wanting to know if the protagonist was a cook, and if a spy came to his restaurant because this rookie was really trying to steal his secrets. Jian warns that the chef didn't seem excited and thinks he was trying to steal the recipes. Kang says he misunderstood and wasn't a spy, so the chef questions where he learned to cook. The protagonist responds that it was basically on his own while Jian elaborates on where he learned. Dong-seon smiles and says he understands, thinking Yu-chan was just excited and he was an amateur. The actor says he really wants to eat the food truck meal again because it was very good, and the chef laughs. Yu-chan says he drove to the studio, but Dong-seon continues to ridicule that, saying that this young man was an amateur chef and if he wants to be successful, he must have attitude and be honest. Talking about wanting to learn Dong-seon's secrets, Kyu Cheol suddenly arrives and asks if there's something good for today because he has high expectations. The cook bows, saying it was nothing compared to him, but Kyu Cheol notices the protagonist, kneeling and saying hello to Chef Na, because he never expected to meet him there, leaving the chef puzzled by this. Kang questions who said he is the chef, and Kyu Cheol says the CEO mentioned it the other day, remembering that day when he asked if the president was okay. Tae-ho responds that he is, and it was thanks to Na Kang-in for saving him, and the chef says it was totally incredible. The president says he was a skilled chef, besides being good at acting, imitating voices, and fighting. Kyu Cheol questions if he is good at cooking too, and Tae-ho confirms. Back to the present, the chef says he doesn't know what he cooks, but would love to try it at least once, and thanks him for saving him. Dong-seon is impressed by this rookie and food truck chef. He had saved Kyu Cheol from terrorists, and the chef says yes, and he should be aware of it. Yujin responds that he also saved her life, and Yu-chan responds that he does the same. A big man appears and says he also saved his life. It was nice to meet him, and he was the composer Kwak Chan-seok, Yujin's older brother. She wanted to buy a meal but thought they could meet together, and he also changed his music, and it turned out really good. Besides saving his sister's life, he was really grateful. Jian says that unlike his appearance, he is quite careful with his family, and Kang comments that people shouldn't be judged by appearances. Yuzyang asks if it was okay for her to have Mr. Na Kang-in's number. He agrees, and the girl thanks him. Her brother says if she's going to message, she should make a group and add him too because he wants to know what they were talking about. Kang thinks that this person could definitely be judged by appearance. Yu-chan from afar comments that Kang really saves all lives, and Kyu Cheol agrees because he should have seen him before, since he had defeated 10 armed terrorists in an instant, leaving Chef Dong-seon pale. Kyu Cheol questions if he was okay, and the chef confirms. wondering why he seemed so incredible, and Kang notices the look, staring with a killer pressure that scares the chef. Dong Xian says lunch is on the house, and Yu Chan asks for a discount too. Now with his stomach full, the protagonist returns to the forge base. Jian comments that the new equipment has arrived. Kang questions if she was excited, but the robot says the models were from 60 years ago, so she has no expectations. The protagonist was going to start by cutting some metal, typing on the computer, and then sending it to the writing machine. He comments about the cuts, wanting to know how to use this machine, and Jian had learned to use it from internet research. The protagonist says he would like to make personal equipment and doesn't know what to do first, but the robot suggests making a weapon. Kang tries to argue about a sword, and Jian suggests making a gun. Far away, the young man decides to make armor first because it wasn't illegal. Considering modern times, Jian suggests a custom dragon outfit. It was a bulletproof vest that protects shoulders, chest, and abdomen. Kang wonders why the designs were so different, and Jian says they are calculated to disperse impact. The young man says it was high-level armor, but the robot argues it's just a vest. He decides he should make something thin to wear without being noticed. Jian says he can choose the type, where the first option disperses the impact of a sniper, and the other withstands many gunshots. Kang doubts there's a sniper in Korea, and the Jackal gang was an unusual case, so he will use hand protection. He was going to measure his body but remembers that this is something that changes all the time. Wondering if he gets stronger after making the armor, Jian responds that minor changes happen in the design, but the protection fails if it changes too much, for example, if he gains weight. Kang wonders if someone who got the armor loses weight. Then he wonders if they can do that with his current equipment, and Jian says they can cut the metal to adjust, but the problem is the budget. Our video ends here. If you enjoyed it, please like and subscribe to the channel. Until next time, bye bye.